the issue at hand today. This is not what matters. I'm interested in the well-being of my Haitian people. This is a time to think about how we can get them out of this mess. This is not a time for talking about a personal political agenda, because we need to put those aside and put Haitian first and foremost, put Haiti first and foremost. So I'm not interested in talking about whether or not I will win. This is not what the Haitian people want to hear now. They want to know how can a responsible leader can help them getting out of this total mess. And this is what we are trying to do with getting all people from diverse background together to figure out a solution for Haiti's problem.
Claude, Joseph, we have to leave it there. I thank you very much indeed for joining me from Port-au-Prince.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Jeff Goods. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and you're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, on YouTube, and in your kitchen, as I like to say, or maybe in your car this morning. If you're out driving and you need to call us on the morning commute, 788-3093 is the commuter line all morning long. In the city this morning, it is -1 in Winnipeg, and we are going to see what today brings. Yesterday was the warmest day. We sure did see a lot of melting. Today, not quite as warm. So we'll get into the forecast in a second. Abby Adiemi's back behind the controls. He's covering weather on the air. Good morning, Abby. Good morning, Corey Funk. Corey directs the show and covers the commute. And good morning, Brad Lillies, who's behind our YouTube controls. Heather Wells is here also with headlines.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba Premier Rob Canoe says his government's pressuring oil companies to fill the void resulting by that unplanned pipeline shutdown. Canoe says almost all the supply to Winnipeg for gas, diesel, and jet fuel comes through that pipeline. Right now, he says the city has a week or two of fuel supplies, and he hopes alternative transportation methods can be in place before then. New legislation on worker rights in this province is stalled at the Manitoba legislature. The government tried to introduce 2 bills yesterday, but the opposition Conservatives used procedural tactics to delay them. We'll hear more in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells, of course, will be with us throughout the morning. I mentioned that it's -1 right now. We actually don't have a daytime high today. The temperature is going to fall through the day to -10. Well, in the first hour of the program, we're going to be talking about what happened yesterday federally in Ottawa. An NDP motion put the war in the Middle East on the agenda in the House of Commons. We'll hear more about a very carefully worded discussion. So we'll hear what happened there and what they settled on. In addition, in the next hour of the program, we're going to talk about spring cleaning your work life. Do you have too many meetings? Do you have too many emails? Are you spinning in circles? How do you change that? So that's coming up in the next hour of the show, second hour rather. A little bit later in the program this morning, we continue a conversation about children in care after Winnipeg Police Chief Danny Smythe called out the CFS system. And said that children in care don't have enough supports. We're going to hear from someone that is now aged out of care about what her life was like. Stay tuned.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Anatomy of a Fall is the kind of movie where it's okay to watch it with someone and then spend an hour afterwards arguing over exactly what happened. Justine Trier won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay for it. She'll be here to tell you why she's interested in stories that aren't easy.
You complain about the life that you chose. You're not a victim.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney is being remembered as a family man, a champion of the environment, and a leader with the courage to get big things done. MPs paid tribute to him yesterday in the House of Commons. Now it's the Canadian public's turn. Starting this morning, his remains will lie in state in Ottawa. The CBC's Janice McGregor is outside the John A. Macdonald building, where Mulroney's casket will arrive in just a few hours. Walk us through, Janice, what will happen today.
Anyone heading downtown to pay their respects to Brian Mulroney today is going to need to bundle up, Marcia. There's a chilly wind fluttering the flags that will remain half-masted here in the parliamentary precinct until after his state funeral on Saturday. The pomp and circumstance of laying a former prime minister to rest will begin when his funeral cortege pulls up outside the Sir John A. Macdonald building here, just across from Parliament Hill, just after 9:30 Eastern. Mulroney's family is going to be greeted by the speakers of the House of Commons and the Senate, and then follow an honor guard of RCMP officers carrying his casket into the main ballroom here for his lying in state. Officers from the Armed Forces, the RCMP, the Parliamentary Protection Service will then take up a ceremonial vigil inside. The family is going to have some private time in that space, and then a long list of dignitaries are expected to file through to pay condolences, starting with Governor General Mary Simon and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. We're also expecting a couple former Governors General, former Prime Minister Joe Clark, Indigenous leaders, diplomats, opposition leaders, parliamentarians past and present. These VIPs are going to be able to sign the books of condolences that are set up for mourners here, in addition to paying their respects personally to the family.
And after the VIPs have gone through, it will be the public's turn.
That's right. And over the last 2 weeks, there's been some nostalgia triggered in this town for a time when politics felt different. But it's also true that Mulroney left office deeply unpopular. So, with the passage of time, how many ordinary people remain inspired by his service as Prime Minister and are going to be moved to file through here, either in Ottawa or in Montreal? Their stories, their reflections on his legacy are often the most interesting part of these big events.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from the Parliamentary Precinct in Ottawa. The latest global report on air quality is out today, and it's not good for Canada.
Previous years, Canada has the cleanest air quality in all of North America. This year, we saw just the exact opposite.
That is Gloria Dolphin-Hammes, the North American head of IQ Air, the organization behind today's report. It uses what it calls the PM 2.5 guideline. That is a measurement of particulate matter in the air affecting the lungs, heart, and brain. Hammes says those levels in Canada are double the rate recommended by the World Health Organization. The leading cause of that increase is wildfires. Only 7 of the 134 countries monitored met the WHO guideline, among them Australia, New Zealand, and Finland. Researchers found Bangladesh is the worst polluted country. The U.S. says a senior Hamas leader has been killed in an airstrike. Marwan Issa is the most senior Hamas leader to be killed since the war began. Word of his death comes as American officials suggest the promised Israeli assault on Rafah may be delayed. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the attack must go ahead to root out Hamas. But the timing may change after Netanyahu and President Joe Biden had their first conversation in over a month. Alex Panetta is in Washington with the details. And Alex, what is Joe Biden asking for?
Well, he wants a sit-down, a pivotal meeting. Biden wants Israel to send a high-level delegation to Washington with officials from multiple agencies, military, intelligence, humanitarian officials, to hear U.S. concerns about a possible ground invasion of Rafah. Netanyahu has apparently accepted. This summit will happen as early as this week. Now, here's what the U.S. says it wants. Instead of smashing into Rafah, in the words of a senior White House official, the U.S. wants an alternate plan without a major ground invasion into this area. An area not only filled with displaced Palestinians, but also it's a vital transit point for food and aid to suffering civilians. The alternative being promoted by the U.S. is to slow the fighting, keep aid flowing, and stabilize other areas of Gaza, areas where Hamas has already been cleared out. In the U.S. view, this would demonstrate that there's a plan for Gaza with a better future post-Hamas. In Biden's view, any attack on Rafah should be limited and focused on senior Hamas figures.
Biden is sending his Secretary of State back to the region later this week. What are we expecting to hear from Antony Blinken?
Blinken has a pair of objectives for his visit to Egypt and Saudi Arabia. One is a potential hostage deal that would pause the fighting and allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza. His other goal is to talk to the Saudis about a long-term peace plan to normalize Saudi-Israeli relations and lay the groundwork for a long-term peace.
I can say we've also impressed upon Israel the imperative of having a plan for Gaza for when the conflict ends, consistent with Israel's needs to defend itself and make sure that October 7th can never happen again.
This is Blinken's 6th visit to the region since last fall.
All right. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
The CBC's Alex Panetta in Washington. The Bank of Japan has made a historic shift in its monetary policy. It has brought in its first interest rate hike in 17 years. Borrowing costs now sit at 0.1%. The move puts an end to negative interest rates. This comes after a rise in prices and salaries over the last few years. Borrowing-free costs had originally been brought in to stimulate Japan's faltering economy. And here at home, economists are expecting to have a little more clarity today on the direction of the economy. Statistics Canada is releasing February's Consumer Price Index report this morning. After dropping last month, the rate of inflation is expected to rise. That reversal would put us more in line with the U.S. economy. As our senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong reports, the two countries have conflicting economic narratives.
Beneath all the numbers and all the economic data lies a riddle about the state of the economy in North America. Inflation numbers in the U.S. and Canada tell two very different stories. Last month, Canada's year-over-year rate of inflation cooled much more than almost anyone was expecting. In the U.S., inflation accelerated. Today's numbers should provide a more clear picture about which story is true.
This is an important number because it could go one of three ways.
That's BMO's chief economist Douglas Porter. He says inflation in Canada may continue to surprise and ease even further. More likely, he says, February probably saw a slight uptick in price growth.
And the third way is that January was a total fluke and we're going to get a really big bounce back here.
And all this matters as Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem is waiting for signs that underlying inflation has cooled enough to start cutting interest rates.
We've come a long way in our fight against inflation. Monetary policy is working, inflation is coming down. But it's too early to loosen the restrictive stance of policy that has gotten us this far.
And key to that is understanding what's really happening with price growth and which narrative about where inflation is headed really applies. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
New DNA tools and relentless research have helped solve a 107-year-old mystery. It involves the identity of a British-Canadian soldier who died in the First World War. As Sam Sampson tells us, it ended up with a remarkable transatlantic phone call.
I'll read it to you here if I put my glasses on.
Richard Hemsley takes out a letter of condolences about his grandfather, Lieutenant Frank Hemsley.
And it says, he was in fact one of God's good men.
The British military veteran immigrated to Canada in 1911. After farming near Prince Albert, Saskatchewan for almost 5 years, he joined the Canadian military to fight in World War I. Frank died in 1917, leading his battalion into the Battle of Hill 70, a deadly fight against Germany that killed 10,000 Canadians.
He's a much loved and respected member of the family, and we know his story.
But they didn't know where he was until now. Turns out Frank's remains were found in France back in 2012. At the time, Canada's Department of National Defence's Casualty Identification Program couldn't extract enough of his DNA from his bones to ID him. But they tried again last year with new technology, and Richard Hemsley was a match. It was a phone call forensic anthropologist Sarah Lockyer won't forget.
This was the first time that I was able to speak to a grandchild who was the DNA donor for a First World War casualty.
Lockyer's program has 42 other skeletons and 39 other graves to identify. She hopes as technology advances, so too do her chances at solving these mysteries. Meanwhile, Hemsley will add a few personal touches for his grandfather's military reburial this summer in France.
On his gravestone will say, he was one of God's good men.
Sam Sampson, CBC News, Regina.
And that is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks so much for joining us on Information Radio. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. Time right now is 6:10. This hour on the program, we are going to be talking about roads. You know that we have potholes out there, no big surprise. But once again, CAA is looking for the worst roads, so we'll have that conversation this morning as we look around town. In addition, we begin with hearing more of Premier Wab Kinu's plan to keep fuel piping into Winnipeg, now that the Imperial Oil Pipeline is shut down. That was the news story that started developing yesterday. So in case you missed what the Premier had to say, we'll play you 5 minutes of his comments yesterday in the legislature. And then speaking of politics, coming up at 10 to 7 this morning, a federal NDP motion to put the war in the Middle East on the agenda in the House of Commons came up, and there was a lot of discussion about wording. We'll tell you where the feds landed, and that is just before 7. Right now, back to Manitoba news. Heather Wells is here with headlines.
Good morning. Well, a Winnipeg mother, nervous that her family is going to be forced to leave the country, is begging the province for help. Kin Gua has lived in Winnipeg with her husband and 10-year-old son for the last 3 years. She worries they're going to have to return to China when her work permit expires in June. The federal government is no longer extending those types of permits. We're going to hear more about this. As well, new legislation on worker rights in Manitoba is stalled in the legislature. The government tried to introduce 2 bills yesterday, but the opposition Conservatives used procedural tactics to delay them. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, good morning, Abby Eddie. Welcome back.
Good morning, Mercy. Nice to be with you again this morning.
I have to say, Corey, look at Abby. Abby always looks cool, but he's kind of wearing like a jacket that looks like he should be outside in the winter.
Yeah.
Not on the a day that's going to be the first day of spring, or is this your farewell?
No, because we're still going to hang on to that cold snap for a while.
Oh, he dressed for the forecast.
So I'm just dressed for the forecast. I'm like, nope, I know it's been warm. I don't want to get myself caught up and get cold.
What is it? What's happening?
It's chilly. That's the first thing. We're starting chilly in the city. Today, we are currently at -2 degrees under cloudy skies in the city. Now, it's going to make you want, I just want to remind you to bundle up because we've been getting spoiled in the last few days. So you might just want to bundle up as you step out this morning. And don't forget to grab your cup of coffee or maybe a cup of tea. And if I peek into what's in store for today, we're looking at a mix of sun and cloud throughout the day with a chance of flurries later this morning. And the wind is picking up. The wind is something we need to take into consideration because it's going to be windy today and it will be a blustery one. But I will tell you, all I see in the forecast is the temperature. I wouldn't say we have a high. It's just going to drop. It's going to drop all through the day with that windiness, and we're just dropping to like -10. Chilly, I would say. Mercy, guess what's on the bright side?
What?
It's the last morning of winter.
It is, yes, as I was alluding to. That's a good thing.
It's the last morning of winter. And for folks listening at home, spring officially starts at 10 p.m. tonight, Central Time. But for today, we're seeing a mix of sun and clouds. And for Winnipeg, it's going to be dropping to -10.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
It's funny, eh? I always find the days where the temperature drops are always a little bit odd. Hey, Corey?
Oh, yeah.
Corey's here. He's here with the commute. What's up?
I'm feeling like a bit of a broken record. It's sidewalks are slippery. There's lots of potholes starting to show up on the roads. That's the biggest issues this morning so far. So look out if you're on the roads. Don't roll your ankle or roll your car's ankle on some of those potholes there. But if you see something else going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
We should mention one warning here in weather that Abby just brought in. A reminder that we should mention Churchill and York today do have that blizzard warning. Remember yesterday we said the snow was going to start overnight and then into today. So near zero visibility at times throughout today and into tonight with wind gusts up to 80 kilometers per hour. And your total snowfall amounts at 15 centimeters. So as I mentioned, let's begin, in case you missed this yesterday, with hearing from the Premier about the Imperial Oil situation. What are the workarounds now that Imperial Oil has shut down a gas pipeline to Winnipeg? Imperial announced it shut down this line that runs between Gretna and Winnipeg over the weekend after inspections raised concerns about a section of the pipe near St. Adolphe. Now, in a statement, the company said that the line supplies gas, diesel, and jet fuel to Winnipeg and surrounding areas, and it will be out of service for approximately 3 months. Premier Wap Kinew says the province is relying on other fuel suppliers during the shutdown. He explained the details of the plan at the legislature yesterday.
Almost everything in terms of gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel is brought in via these pipelines. And the companies that supply fuel in the Winnipeg region are now standing up alternative delivery vehicles to be able to bring those forms of fuel into the Winnipeg region. The goal is to bring in the same amount of fuel via truck and train, the same quantity, so about 12,000 barrels of gasoline per day when we're talking about the Imperial terminal in particular, to be able to ensure that there's a continuous supply. So what our government is doing is we've activated the incident command structure that we have so that we can pull the various logistical resources together, because this is a situation that we're going to have to live with as Manitobans for the next few months. So the first thing we're doing is we're using the weight of government to lean on these companies to do everything that they can to bring in gasoline, diesel, jet fuel by truck and by train. And then at the same time, on a parallel track, we're looking to other backup plans if the companies fall short of their targets. So as one example, I had a call with Governor Doug Borgum of North Dakota this afternoon, and so we've had those engagements with his administration about whether there's any logistical expertise, equipment that they can help us procure, or even backup fuel supply sources. So we've got a strong plan in the first instance. We got a plan through the companies to be able to replace the fuel supply that usually comes via pipe, and then we as a government are working on a parallel plan. So I'll point out for people in Manitoba that through the weekend we have learned that Quebec has a strategic reserve of maple syrup, but our country does not have a strategic reserve of gasoline. So somebody might want to do something about that. That's the sort of thing that we're looking at right now. We want to let Manitobans know that this is happening. We asked Imperial Oil, who is the company who runs this pipeline, and they're one of the big distributors here in the province. We've asked them to notify the public as of yesterday, which is the same day that the pipes came offline. And today we're sharing that message just so Manitobans know that this is something that we're going to have to work with and live with for the next few months. When it comes to steps that our government can take to help you and your family through this period, the biggest step we can take is the one that we've already done, which is we brought the provincial fuel tax to zero starting on January 1st. Now, I just want to reaffirm that we're going to continue to be there. We're doing these sort of backup plans and logistical endeavors to ensure that we're going to continue to be there for you and your family as we manage this ongoing situation. And if there is a need to bring further supports into place, then our government will definitely be there. We have a week or two worth of fuel in the city right now. Our hope is that that backup supply will be in place ahead of that 2-week period. My approach and what I've directed our government's approach to be is constructive with a healthy dose of skepticism. Constructive in the sense that we're going to be there to support and lean on these companies to make sure that they bring the supplies online, and at the same time that support is going to mean that we're drawing a ton of petroleum inspectors that we have in Westman in our oil patch into the St. Adolphe area to supervise, to ensure that environmental standards are being met, to ensure that the operation is moving ahead in a good way. And at the same time, we are going to be doing our own due diligence, both on the infrastructure question, but also on the fuel supply question here in Winnipeg, to ensure that you and your family and our economy continue to move forward in a good way. I don't have all the numbers offhand, but there's more than 50,000 train cars on their way to Winnipeg right now, any number of fuel vehicles. The main pipeline, the Enbridge line that runs from southwestern Manitoba into North Dakota, has a terminal at Gretna, and that's where the line spikes off and then heads north into Transcona and then into St. B. That part of the line has been taken offline by Imperial Oil, and so what's now happening is that Gretna terminal on the main Enbridge line is being opened up to fuel trucks and trains. And so that'll get us to about half of what the Imperial facility would provide by way of gasoline on a given day, and so we need to backfill that other half, plus look at the other terminal that's run by Shell.
Premier Wab Kinew during question period yesterday, and apologies for I know that that binging in the background was unavoidable. It was going on site. CBC News did reach out, by the way, to Imperial Oil. They did decline to comment beyond what they already shared in their press release, which is what we've been sharing with you. The City of Winnipeg CAO weighed in. He says he feels confident, that's a quote, confident about the company's plans to work around the issue. If you want to read our coverage on the story, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Ashern, Ericsdale, we want to get to know you a little better. CBC's Communities in Focus is coming to your communities March 18th to 22nd. Come and share the stories of your home with me. I'm Bryce Hoy. Let's get to know each other. Communities in Focus. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
.22 is the time. It's cloudy and -2 in Winnipeg. Mainly clear over in Brandon, -2. Thompson has drifting snow right now. It's -19. In Winnipeg, our temperature will fall to -10. It's going to be really windy this afternoon. Up in Churchill and York, that blizzard warning does continue for the area. Well, down south here, yesterday we had a warm day, unlike what today is going to be. It got to 6 degrees was our forecast high. And a lot of melting happened around town, revealing yet more potholes. MPI, as we've been sharing with you, says that February saw 8 times the number of pothole damage claims compared with the last 5 years. And while nearly every street has some kind of pothole or bump, some are worse than others. So as you likely know, CAA goes on the hunt every year. They're looking for people to help them find the worst road. And they may be spoiled for choices this year. The campaign officially kicks off today. Ewald Friesen is with us, CAA's manager, Manitoba's manager of government and community relations. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us, Ewald. So tell us how the competition works, the contest works, and what people should know if they want to nominate a road.
Right. So we did a member survey recently, and we learned something quite interesting. Generally, in Manitoba, 96% of folks are concerned about the state of Manitoba's roads. No surprise there. But the interesting thing is that only 83% of people who answered our poll said that they do anything about it. So generally speaking, what we do is we go home, we'll vent to our spouse, a colleague, even our mechanic, but only 3% are actually going to take these concerns to the people who can do something about it. So politicians, elected representatives, that type of thing. So what our campaign endeavors to do is to give voice to these folks and to help prioritize road repair and maintenance and budgets to make sure that these roads are addressed.
Now, it works sometimes. Empress Street is one in the past. It's also been fixed, but this year it's in shambles, actually, again. Lots of potholes, broken pavement all over the place. A road seems to be sinking. What concerns you about roads like that are, A, badly in need of repair, and B, don't seem to be able to stay repaired?
Yeah, so no, we have seen successes in the past. I mean, our campaign certainly is not about shaming and blaming. This is about empowerment. But these roads we have seen in the past been repaired. So, for instance, let's take Highway 307. We got to give some credit where credit is due. It was repaired or slated for repair in 2024. Leela Avenue was also slated for repair. Goulet Avenue, this is interesting. Goulet Avenue was our number one road in the city of Winnipeg last year. And the day of our reveal of our worst roads list, we saw City of Winnipeg crews out there on the road doing their thing, fixing it up. And also credit to the province of Manitoba. So Highway 75, St. Agathe area, St. Agathe to Morris, the province announced $61 million worth of funding to repair a stretch of 24 kilometers of road out there on Highway 75. So we know the campaign works, which is why we're encouraging Manitobans to, maybe not complain to your mechanic, but rather complain to us. And we will then, your friends over here at CAA will take these concerns to the people who can do something about it. Go ahead, Marcy.
I was going to just ask you, how often does a road make the list more than 1 year after it's been repaired, like Empress?
Oh, yeah. No, we've seen usual suspects time and time again. So this is the 12th year of our campaign. And some of the usual suspects that we've seen sort of been demoted over the years and then kind of make a reoccurrence. These are Empress Avenue, Saskatchewan Avenue. Let's see, Taylor has made a reoccurrence. Some of these won't be much of a surprise.
A lot of truck traffic routes.
Yeah, truck traffic routes. So here's the thing. So you mentioned potholes in your intro, and we know that, in Winnipeg, we have those freeze and thaw cycles that make potholes such an issue here in the springtime. But there's other things that contribute, of course. So some of this is like weight loads because of the truck traffic that you mentioned, and also the types of traffic and the traffic volumes all affect the quality of our roads. And what we're talking about here is really an affordability issue, because in our survey, we learned that 70% of Manitobans are paying out of pocket for repairs to their vehicles. And this amounts to an average of $952 per year that Manitobans are paying at a time when we know family budgets are already stretched. So we see this as an affordability issue. Moreover, poor road conditions and poor road maintenance leads to other issues, like you have to replace your tires more and more. So now's really the time for provincial and municipal governments to turn their attention to these types of things.
We will tag out with the website here so people can vote and tell you what they think the worst road is. Thank you so much for being with us early this morning. I know our plan was to have you on a little later, and you switched gears because we've got some things in the works that are developing. So appreciate you, Ewald. Thank you.
My pleasure, Marcy. Thank you very much.
That's Ewald Friesen, CAA's manager in Manitoba of Government and Community Relations. Their contest launches today. Do you think you know where the worst road is? Nominate it. CAAmanitoba.com. Well, time to slide into a little music this morning. This is Nova Scotia singer-songwriter Matt Hughes with Sick Day.
There goes another day, and you still feel the same as before. A sink full of dirty dishes and a mountain of clothes on your floor. We'll get 'em next time, but that's all for today. You've already clocked out, and you got nothing left in the tank. Try to save up to go somewhere special. Give it all to your landlord instead. Make plans on your one day off, but spend the whole day stuck in your bed. You'll get 'em next time, but that's all for today. You've already checked out, and you got nothing left on your plate. Well, when you're down and out and you're done with it, or when you just need a break, go ahead and call in sick. When you're at your wit's end and you're done with it, why don't you let yourself go? Why don't you call in sick? They call it earning a living, but I swear we all deserve better than this. It's not what you had in mind, just being so tired from just trying to exist. We'll get 'em next time, but that's all for today. Get your boss on the line, let him know you're not coming into work today. Well, when you're down and out and you're done with it, or when you just need a break, go ahead and call in sick.
Fun tune, right? Sick Day from Matt Hughes out of Halifax. Just call in sick. Coming up on the show this morning after 7 o'clock. If you find your days at work cluttered with too many unnecessary meetings, the paperwork's piling up, you feel like calling in sick, maybe what you really need is to spring clean your work life. Stay tuned. We'll have that conversation after 7. Right now, it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is -2 in downtown Winnipeg. Enjoy it because the temperature is heading down through the day. A strong northwest wind will send our temperature down to -10 this afternoon. A mother, nervous her family will be forced to leave the country, is begging the province for help. Kin Gua has lived in Winnipeg with her husband and 10-year-old son for the last 3 years. She worries they'll have to return to China when her work permit expires in June. Gua holds a post-grad work permit, but the federal government no longer extends those kinds of permits.
We feel very anxious and helpless. When I told my son the serious situation, we may be forced to go home. When he heard this, he cried sadly, and he don't want to live here.
Now, Gua and her family are trying to stay through the Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program, but it is getting far more applications than it can accept in a year. Manitoba's immigration minister says she is working with the federal government to find a solution. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew says his government is pressuring the oil companies to fill the void that will be caused by an unplanned pipeline shutdown. Kinew says almost all the supply to Winnipeg for gas, diesel, and jet fuel comes through the pipeline.
The goal is to bring in the same amount of fuel via truck and train. The same quantity, so about 12,000 barrels of gasoline per day when we're talking about the Imperial Terminal in particular, to be able to ensure that there's a continuous supply.
Kinew says he has also talked with North Dakota's governor about potentially borrowing equipment or even providing a backup fuel supply. He says right now the city has a week or two of fuel supplies. He hopes alternative transportation methods can be in place before it runs out. 18 balloons were released into the air at Assiniboine Park last night. Maya Grattan would have celebrated her 18th birthday yesterday. The teen was one of 5 people killed in Carman on February 11th. Juliet Hastings says she wanted to wish her daughter a happy birthday. All of Grattan's contact with CFS leading up to her killing is now under review by the province. Grattan was living with the man now charged in her death. 29-year-old Ryan Manakizik is also charged in the deaths of his partner and their 3 children. He faces 5 counts of first-degree murder. The province's plan to make it easier for workers to unionize and to ban the use of replacement workers has been stalled. The government tried to introduce the bills in the legislature, but the opposition PCs used procedural tactics to delay them. One bill would forbid employers from bringing in replacement workers during strikes and lockouts. B. Brusk at the Canadian Labour Congress says the decision to strike isn't made lightly.
Can I afford to go out on strike or can I not? What is the employer trying to take away from me? Workers don't make that decision lightly to walk a picket line. Nobody wants to walk a picket line. People want to get a fair deal. This is about leveling the playing field when you get to the bargaining table.
Another NDP bill would end a requirement for secret ballot voting for workers to unionize if a majority sign a union card. The body of former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney will arrive in downtown Ottawa this morning. It will lie in state today and tomorrow. Brian Mulroney died on February 29th. A state funeral is planned for Saturday in Montreal. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Well, spring has almost sprung. It officially begins just after 10 Central Time tonight, 10:06 to be precise. Many Manitobans are coming out of a warm winter. Winnipeg recorded its 3rd warmest February in 150 years. Dave Phillips, senior climatologist at Environment Canada, predicts more drought conditions in the West this year. And while he says warmer winters may have seemed strange, they may become the norm.
We've all received the impacts, the effects, the fallout from when weather is not normal. And, you know, it is something that we're going to see more of in the future. I mean, hey, this is not an outlier. This is not just freakish. This is the pattern that we're seeing.
And Phillips cautions the warmer days could see more bugs, pests, and disease, And, of course, less snow, he says, could impact agriculture and forest fires. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, I don't know about the whole, I know it's March and like a lion, out like a lamb. But when it comes to winter exiting, we're not going to have a warm exit. Today, actually, we don't have a daytime high. Our temperature is going to fall. Abby's going to tell us how much. Hi.
Hi, Marcy. And the sad thing is not just about today. It just keeps dropping even tomorrow. We're just going to drop. We're literally going to stay below freezing points like all week. So that's what it looks like. Let's actually start from the northern part of the territory, the province today. Currently, Churchill is sitting at a bone chilly minus 19 degrees, seeing drifting snow. Now, throughout the day, you should expect cloudy stats, but don't fret because the sun is going to make an appearance. Then there's going to be a transition into a mix of sun and clouds later this morning, and the temperatures will even drop further as we move into the afternoon, dropping down to a frigid minus 20 with the wind chill factored in. It's going to feel like minus 25 this morning, and then a bone chilly minus 30 during lunch period. So for people out there, please, there's a risk of frostbite. Take care. Now, further north in Churchill, for folks there, you need to bundle tight because it's a chilly minus 18 out there as we start the day. You have light snow and it's blowing winds. Now, the day ahead has a lot in stock. You should expect a mix of sun and clouds later this morning, and then temperatures are set to even drop further to minus 20. But wait, there's more because we have that blizzard warning effect for parts of that region. That low pressure system that swept in yesterday actually brought snow to York regions and Churchill, and it's not planning to leave anytime soon because it's going to be staying there, bringing strong winds that kicked in last night, whipping the falling snow and then creating a blizzard condition. So you should take it out there. Currently, Brandon is at minus 3 degrees. We move to Dauphin. Dauphin is at minus 3. Gimli is at minus 5. Steinbach at minus 1. And Morris at 0.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
Let's get into the morning commute.
Yes, you probably heard that phone ringing over there. That was Dan on a bike, and he's
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Dan. He said rapid transit is looking lovely this morning in terms of bike paths right now. There's the odd icy patch though here and there, and also when it starts to melt, he's got the odd splash from a car. So if you see a cyclist, maybe and you see a puddle, maybe just avoid that puddle so you don't splash them. Other than that, things are pretty smooth out there. Haven't heard anything else on the commuter line. Highways look like they're doing all right, and sidewalks though are very slippery. But if you see something else going on out there, if you got a pothole to let me know about, 204-788-3093.
And speaking of highways, we should mention that we're going to be heading up Highway 6 again tomorrow.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so we're going to the area of, we're going to be highlighting Ashern and Ericsdale. So those two communities going to be highlighted as we do Communities in Focus. And it continues. Bryce Hoy is the reporter who is there all week long in the area. Also, Nadia Kidwai has office hours in the area as well. And you can read all about it on my Facebook page or on our website. But we're going to be going up, Corey and I, to bring the morning show live from the Chicken Chef in Ashern. That's our location on Thursday morning. So if you're up in that area, please come say hi. We're going to have a community event after with some coffee and some morning danishes and such. So we just really love to see you there to tell us more about your community. That's the whole purpose of Communities in Focus. It is 21 minutes now to 7 o'clock. Crystal Ramlacan is going to put business in focus. She's here with our report. Hi there.
Hello. Good morning, Marcy.
Morning. So shares of a Canadian tech company are soaring. What's behind this?
Well, payment tech firm Nuvei says it has formed a special committee to evaluate expressions of interest from potential buyers. So that's why that's happening. And the Montreal-based company made the announcement after media reports on the weekend speculating about a potential deal that would see the company taken private. Now, the company is backed by Canadian actor and entrepreneur Ryan Reynolds, who made an investment last year. Nuvei also has partnerships with Adobe and Microsoft, so some big names here. And the Wall Street Journal is reporting a Boston-based company is in talks to buy Nuvei, but Nuvei not commenting on that right now. For more on this, here's Carolyn McGregor, who is the Dean of the Faculty of Business and IT at Ontario Tech University.
Well, I think that it's bringing to light a key challenge that Canada has at the moment in the area of technology innovation, and that is that technologies seem to get to a certain point and then they are getting poached often into the United States to expand the business there.
However, though, Nuvei cautions it has not entered into any agreements and says there's no assurance any discussions would result in a deal.
Let's go to another story. The CEO of Shopify is receiving one of the largest compensation packages in Canadian history. How much?
Yes. So the Globe and Mail is reporting that Shopify granted stock awards to Toby Luca, valued at close to $200 million.
Wow.
So Shopify, yeah, that's a lot of money. So Shopify disclosed these recent stock awards in filings on an electronic system that's maintained by Canadian securities regulators that tracks stock ownership by directors and officers of public companies. Now, this compensation came in the 2024 fiscal year, so Shopify not required to discuss the reasons for it until 2025. Some experts say this is an incentive for Luca to improve the company's share price, and others question the motivation for granting the executive such a large compensation package. Now, Shopify shares have jumped sharply over the past year, but remain well below those all-time highs that were set in late 2021 during the pandemic. Now, for more on this, here's Christopher Chen, who is a managing partner at Compensation Governance Partners, which is an advisory firm that specializes in executive pay.
And whether this is a one-time mega grant or it's something which is just an annual grant, and he'll continue to receive compensation from the market as normal. So that would be something I think people should watch and monitor. Is this a one-time thing, or is he going to get even more of these stock options going forward in the future?
Now, the package could also reflect the company's efforts to benchmark its executive compensation to the U.S. tech companies, which it compares itself to.
Finally, before the markets this morning, let's look at a popular YouTuber who's made a deal now with Amazon. What can you tell us about him?
Yes, so Mr. Beast, the popular video creator known for big philanthropic gestures and extreme stunts, is making the leap from YouTube to Amazon Prime with a new reality competition show. So the show is going to be called Beast Games, and it's going to be released on Prime Video. And it's going to feature over 1,000 contestants, a $5 million prize, and many other world records. That's according to the creator, whose real name is Jimmy Donaldson. And he says it's going to be the largest game show in history with the most contestants and the biggest cash prize. Netflix previously claimed both of those records with its Squid Game, The Challenge reality competition series that was based on the massively popular dystopian show by the same name. Now, Donaldson has said that his decision to host this show on Amazon stemmed in part because other platforms wouldn't give him the same level of creative control. And so, Marcy, he said to both host and executive produce this show.
I think a lot of people will be leaning in. Let's get to markets now. What do the numbers say?
In Europe, markets are flat as global investors look ahead to the start of the U.S. Federal Reserve's two-day policy meeting. And we're also going to be getting Canada's latest inflation numbers later today. Germany is up, the UK is down, France is up. In Asia, markets are mixed. Japan is up, Shanghai and Hong Kong are both down. Oil is down 23 cents to $82.49 US per barrel. Gold is down $7.51 to $2,152.85 US per ounce. And the dollar is down almost a quarter of a cent to 73.66 cents US.
Okay, I have an assignment for you before you go.
Oh, okay. All right.
So this isn't for tomorrow. This will be for, because I'm trying to think, we're off the show tomorrow because we're traveling, and Thursday, maybe for Friday or Monday. So the deadline's loose, but I don't know what you drink out of in the morning, if you have tea, coffee, water, but bring a mug.
Okay.
So if you don't drink out of we need it to be a mug.
A mug? Okay.
Yeah, a mug.
Let's see. I usually drink out of
what
this.
You got there?
The people on YouTube can see it. It's like a protein shaker.
Okay, that'll qualify. Yeah. But if you do have a mug, bring that too, and then we'll talk about why when we get to it.
All right, sounds good.
Intrigued?
Yes, I am. I'm very curious about what this is going to be about. I'll bring my mug.
The lead up's better than the payoff, I can tell you that much, but still.
Okay.
Take care, Crystal. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. Thanks, Marcy. You too.
That's Crystal Ramlakana joining us every morning via Zoom. 6:45 a.m. is the time right now, and still ahead on Information Radio. Coming up after 7 o'clock, it is spring. It officially arrives at 10:06 to be very specific tonight in Manitoba. And we talk to Winnipeggers about their upcoming spring plans. So stay tuned. We'll hear what you're going to be out and about doing. First, though, a little bit of music from also a Winnipeg artist. This is Snacky. Tune's called Could It Be on 89.3.
Call on me ever anymore. Do you think of me? Still I can't be sure. I've been wasting time on my phone, wondering where you've been. Creeping, used to call me boo. Now I'm wondering who you've been with. Is there someone new? Dangerous games, played them all with you. Just can't let it go. Feeling for something new. But could it be you could be getting everything to me? Yeah, could it be you could be getting everything to me? Well, we've been apart, torn up my heart, and the silence is deadly. Silence is deadly, deadly, deadly. But we were never ready for all of this. You know what I mean, how we were acting quick. But your heart is full of gold, and I wish I could know you more, more, more. Could it be you could be getting everything to me? Yeah, could it be you could be getting everything to me? Yeah, when I hear from you, words are very few. What more can I do? I feel so confused. When I hear from you, words are very few. What more can I do? I feel so confused. When I hear from you, when I hear from you. Yeah, what could it be? You could be getting everything to me. Yeah, could it be? You could be getting everything to me. Yeah, could it be? You could be getting everything to me. Yeah, could it be that you're everything to me?
It's Winnipeg Snacky. Maybe you caught her at a jazz fest here in town. We'll watch for upcoming shows in 2024. Tune's called Could It Be?
Hey, how's it going? I'm Nellie Furtado, and I'm bringing the party to the 2024 Juno Awards. Join me in Halifax for Canada's biggest night in music with performances by my friends, The Beaches, Maestro Fresh West, Charlotte Cardin, and me. It's a party you're never gonna forget. Promise, you know?
Don't miss the 2024 Juno Awards live from Halifax. Sunday, March 24th at 8 Eastern on CBC and CBC Gem.
11 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. Thanks for joining us. It is Tuesday morning, March 19th. And Juno's coming up. A lot of Manitobans to cheer for. You can read about them on our website. When the nominations came out, we did some coverage of the locals. -2 in the city. Our temperature today is going to fall to -10. Next, we turn our attention to federal politics. The war in the Middle East took center stage in the House of Commons yesterday. Members of Parliament were focused on an NDP motion. The motion was intended to address Canada's relationship with Israel and the situation in Gaza. Now, here at home, as you might recall, last week, Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew called for a ceasefire.
I make this call today because the scale of destruction we have now witnessed and the emergence of famine in Gaza are incompatible with the values that unite us as Manitobans: respect for human rights, a desire to live in peace and pluralism, and a commitment to advance reconciliation. Is this the only way to conduct a war against Hamas?
Now, at the federal level, by the end of the day yesterday, the language of the original motion to address the situation in Gaza was significantly amended before it was carried. To go over how things played out, we are joined by Ryan Tumulty. He's a parliamentary reporter with the National Post and joins us most Tuesday mornings with Ottawa Report. Hi there.
Hi.
So can you just start with, remind us at the federal level, who introduced the motion?
Yeah, so this was an NDP motion. It was sort of championed by their foreign affairs critic, Heather McPherson. It was sort of a broad motion aimed at the Israel-Hamas conflict, calling for a ceasefire, calling for more humanitarian aid. It was generally designed to, bring an end to the conflict as much as possible.
How did it play out in the House of Commons, specifically when it comes to language, the original motion and then what was talked about and changed?
Yeah, so one of the really crucial parts of the original motion, and one of the things that became most contentious, was that the original motion called for a Palestinian state, the immediate recognition of a Palestinian state. Canada certainly intends to move towards a Palestinian state, but Canada's sort of official position so far has always been that that is a process that has to come about through peace negotiations, and not something that would happen sort of immediately. And so, the first version of the motion was debated all day. We know that there were talks going on in the background between the Liberals and the NDP about ways to change it. It looked like those negotiations did not bear any fruit until sort of the 11th hour when these changes came in and watered down different parts of the motion, changed many things, but sort of most crucially, sort of removed that reference to the immediate recognition of a Palestinian state, turned it into something that would be more part of a peace process, which is, as I said, more in line with Canada's foreign policy so far.
The NDP said this move was not meant to be a, quote, gotcha motion. But even before it came before the House, there were splits in the Liberal Party over this. Can you tell us what happened in the aftermath for the Liberals?
Yeah, so, the Israeli-Hamas war has divided the Liberal caucus almost from the beginning. There are people who feel passionately on both sides of this issue, and we were seeing that play out yesterday for certainly. We know, early on yesterday, it did not look like the Liberal cabinet would vote for this, that perhaps individual MPs would vote differently, but the Liberal cabinet could not support this. They did come out and support this amended, changed motion. But there were still Liberal MPs who were on the other side who voted with the Conservatives against this motion. Three in particular, Anthony Housefather, Marco Mancino, and of course from Winnipeg, Ben Carr. Those three MPs have been sort of staunch defenders of Israel throughout this, and I think the motion's language was just, even changed, was just still too far for them.
And just to look at where it landed from the original language, the quote is that the government will work toward the, quote, establishment of the state of Palestine as part of a negotiated two-state solution. So I know that you were alluding to that, Ryan. How did the Conservatives handle this?
Yeah, I mean, the Conservatives were resolute throughout the entire day. They were opposed to it, completely. The original motion and the amendments, they were opposed to the amendments being brought in at such a late hour. That really seemed to rankle the Conservatives. But generally, they have argued that motions like this, motions that seem to be supporting the idea or moving more closely towards a Palestinian state, would in effect be, rewarding Hamas for its actions on October 7th, which, they argue is what started this entire conflict in the first place.
Do you expect the New Democrats will continue pressing for the recognition of a Palestinian state over the coming days and weeks based on where yesterday was left?
Yeah, this is important to the NDP. It's important to many of their supporters, and you can tell that. I'm sure it will continue to come up in question period and things like that. I'd be surprised because opposition motions or opposition days are so few and far between. I would be surprised if the NDP use an opposition day motion for this again. I think they'll probably want to focus more on domestic issues going forward, but I guess only time will tell on that.
I just want to ask you before you go, because we're talking about opposition days. The Conservative Party, to another subject here, has a few of those this week, I understand. And they say that they plan on pressing the Liberals on the upcoming carbon tax increase, which is April 1st. It's scheduled for. How will they do that?
Yeah, so they are basically finding ways to make the Liberals vote in favor of that increase as often as possible. It's not just happening at the Conservatives' opposition day motions in the House of Commons. It is happening in every House of Commons committee. They are bringing up the carbon tax. And I think basically what the Conservatives are trying to do is really, they know this policy is unpopular. Another hike during our affordability crisis is not going to be well received. And I think they are just trying to tie the Liberals directly to this policy as much as possible.
Ryan, thank you for the analysis. Appreciate it.
No problem. Take care.
You as well. Ryan Tumulty, parliamentary reporter for the National Post. It is coming up to 3 minutes to 7 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. And let's get to Heather Wells this morning. She's here with our developing news stories and headlines.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's premier says his government is pressuring the oil companies to fill the void resulting from that unplanned pipeline shutdown. Rob Canoe says almost all the supply to Winnipeg for gas, diesel, and jet fuel comes through the pipeline. And right now, he says the city has a week or two of fuel supplies. New legislation on worker rights in the province is stalled at the Manitoba legislature. The government tried to introduce 2 bills yesterday, but the opposition PCs used procedural tactics to delay them. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
We have a blizzard warning this morning for Churchill and York. We knew that was going to be happening with the snowfall amounts total from late yesterday, overnight into today, and through the day, 10 to 15 centimeters, and that means near zero visibility at times off the bay. So blizzard conditions expected up in that area. In the south, different, very spring-like day. We're going to have crunchy ice underfoot because our temperature is going to fall. Cloudy right now, it's -2 in Winnipeg. Brandon's mainly clear, but it is also -2. And in the city of Winnipeg, our temperature is going to fall to -10 this afternoon. And the winds are going to gust 40, increasing to 60 later this morning. So it's just going to be kind of one of those chilly days. In traffic, I don't know about you, but my car looks like it's like a tortoise on its back on the shell trying to get up, having trouble. When I get caught in those back lane ruts, trying to turn out of them sometimes is very challenging. Otherwise, though, other than the ice underfoot, the driving conditions should be pretty straightforward spring-like. Call us if not, and if you see a problem anywhere on your commute, whether it's the highways or here in the city, 788-3093, I'd like to remind you, is the traffic line. In the next hour of Information Radio, how many emails are in your inbox? I've got near 10,000 in mine. I know. How do you clean it up, though? Where do you find the time? We're going to talk about spring cleaning your work life. Boundaries with your boss, workload, too many meetings. What is it that you need to change to feel more relaxed heading into this new season? That's coming up after 7. In addition, after 7 o'clock on the show, spring does officially arrive tonight. We're going to talk to Winnipeggers about their upcoming plans as we get ready. And then to serious matters at 10 to 8. The NDP's proposed name change bill is supposed to help sexual assault victims, but someone who works in a crisis center says it won't be helpful. We have a series of reactions to this new piece of legislation. Yesterday, we heard from a criminal defense lawyer. Today, we're going to hear from this guest. So that is coming up in a conversation just before 8 o'clock. Right now, it's just before 7, and World Report is next.
Today on The Current.
You sure you didn't eat a cupcake?
No. Learning how to trust and why not to lie are important childhood lessons. A new study found that kids were more honest when an adult showed them that they trusted them. How kids learn the social cues around truth and lies, coming up on The Current.
Yeah, that's it, Diggit.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. A new report on global air quality says only 7 nations are meeting World Health Organization guidelines. While countries like Australia and Finland are receiving passing grades, Canada is not. Anand Ram has more on the global rankings.
On a hot summer day during a heat wave in Dhaka last year, children cool off in a river. But what most Bangladeshis couldn't escape, air pollution. Today, the country was named the most polluted in a global report by IQ Air. Glory Dolphin-Hamas is its North American CEO.
The report, it focuses on PM 2.5, which is actually the pollutant that kills the most amount of people on this planet.
Tiny particulate matter that can affect the lungs, heart, and brain. In Bangladesh, it's created by industry and vehicle emissions. The problem in Canada, wildfires.
Previous years, Canada has the cleanest air quality in all of North America. This year, we saw just the exact opposite.
Canada's PM 2.5 levels were double those recommended by the World Health Organization. Amy Lee is an air quality researcher at the University of Waterloo and says precautions need to be on Canadians' minds now.
It may be a little bit late if we only start to react during the wildfire smoke. I think now is a good time to make improvement to the existing system, find the right filters to use.
And experts are worried that Canada is in for a repeat of last year, as low snowpack and drought are priming the conditions for intense wildfires. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
Climate scientists also say Canada has experienced its warmest winter in 77 years of national record keeping. Winter ends early tonight, or if you're on the East Coast, very early tomorrow morning. Environment Canada says from December to February, Canada was 5.2 degrees Celsius warmer than average. Former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney is being remembered as a family man, a champion of the environment, and a leader with the courage to get big things done. MPs paid tribute to him yesterday in the House of Commons. Now it's the public's turn. Starting this morning, he will lie in state in Ottawa. The CBC's Janice McGregor is outside the John A. Macdonald building, where Mulroney's casket will arrive in just about an hour and a half. Janice, walk us through what's going to happen.
Anyone heading downtown to pay their respects to Brian Mulroney today is going to need to bundle up, Marcia. There's a chilly wind fluttering the flags that will remain half-masted here in the parliamentary precinct until after his state funeral on Saturday. The pomp and circumstance of laying a former prime minister to rest will begin when his funeral cortege pulls up outside the Sir John A. Macdonald building here, just across from Parliament Hill, just after 9:30 Eastern. Mulroney's family is going to be greeted by the speakers of the House of Commons and the Senate, and then follow an honor guard of RCMP officers carrying his casket into the main ballroom here for his lying in state. Officers from the Armed Forces, the RCMP, the Parliamentary Protection Service will then take up a ceremonial vigil inside. The family is going to have some private time in that space, and then a long list of dignitaries are expected to file through to pay condolences, starting with Governor General Mary Simon and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. We're also expecting a couple former Governors General, former Prime Minister Joe Clark, Indigenous leaders, diplomats, opposition leaders, parliamentarians, past and present. These VIPs are going to be able to sign the books of condolences that are set up for mourners here, in addition to paying their respects personally to the family.
And after the VIPs have gone through, it will be the public's turn.
That's right. And over the last 2 weeks, there's been some nostalgia triggered in this town for a time when politics felt different. But it's also true that Mulroney left office deeply unpopular. So, with the passage of time, how many ordinary people remain inspired by his service as Prime Minister and are going to be moved to file through here, either in Ottawa or in Montreal? Their stories, their reflections on his legacy are often the most interesting part of these big events.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from the Parliamentary Precinct in Ottawa. Advocates say there is good reason why an innocent black man ran from Ottawa police. Yesterday, we told you about Kane Nyandagara being tasered during a foot chase. Some critics say he should not have run, but his supporters say he was right to distrust police. Arthur White-Crummey has been following the story.
Those brief moments of video show Ottawa police officers hit and kick Kane Nyandagara, then push his face into the snow after they mistook him for a wanted man. Martine Rita Sabushmeki says it has shaken the Burundian community.
He is traumatized, the family is traumatized, our community is traumatized.
Cesar Dema Musa, who leads a black advocacy group, says it adds to a long list of outrages.
And I am outraged because 4 years after George Floyd, we still see such cases where a black person is victim of a police brutality that involves humiliation.
Some see another side to the story. Gregory Brown, a former Ottawa police officer, is now a professor at Carleton University. He says running from police is never a good idea.
It has resulted in tragic outcomes.
Danette Edwards is a lawyer with the Black Legal Action Center. She says black people have good reason to distrust the police, and running isn't hard to understand.
Sometimes your instincts kick in, even though you might be innocent, right? And you know as a black person, these police officers are going to harm me. And exactly that's what happened.
She says police need better training in de-escalation and bias. Police confirmed the arrest was a case of mistaken identity, and they released Nyandagara unconditionally. They say they will reach out to him to discuss his concerns. Arthur White-Crummey, CBC News, Ottawa.
Israel is not expected to launch its attack on Hamas in Rafah until a delegation meets with U.S. officials in Washington. This comment comes after a phone call between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. President Joe Biden. The U.S. president says an attack on Rafah is a mistake that would claim too many civilian lives. Biden is sending his Secretary of State back to the region later this week. Antony Blinken says he will be working to forge an agreement.
The purpose is multifold. It's, of course, to push for an agreement on a ceasefire and the release of hostages. As you know, we're intensely engaged on that every single day, and we're doing everything we can to push that forward and to reach an agreement.
U.S. officials also say a top Hamas commander has been killed in an airstrike. Marwan Issa is the most senior leader to be killed since the war began. Statistics Canada releases its latest report on inflation later this morning. Last month's report saw it slide to 2.9%. That decrease was a surprise to economists because inflation in the U.S. continues to rise. Douglas Porter is the chief economist for BMO. He says today's report could see inflation rates either ease up or down a little bit, but he also says there could be a bigger hit.
And the third way is that January was a total fluke and we're going to get a really big bounce back here.
Today's report will be closely followed by the Bank of Canada. Governor Tiff Macklem is waiting for signs inflation is cooling enough to start cutting interest rates. If you are one of the people asking, where is Kate? We have an update. The Princess of Wales was apparently photographed on the weekend while shopping with Prince William. But another royal portrait is getting a lot of attention today. An old picture of the Queen that we now know was digitally enhanced. Anna Cunningham has those details.
The photo news agency Getty Pictures has told The Telegraph this image of Queen Elizabeth has been digitally enhanced at source. It was taken by Catherine, Princess of Wales, at Balmoral in August 2022. And it shows the Queen surrounded by her 10 grandchildren and great-grandchildren. It's understood several inconsistencies were found, including a line where the tartan of the Queen's skirt does not match.
No, it doesn't help because it wobbles public belief and sympathy, yes.
Caroline Aston is a royal commentator with Majesty magazine. She says this will only add to last week's furore over another manipulated photo, this one of Princess Catherine and her children.
And I'm sure behind the scenes there's plenty of debate going on about how this sort of flurry of public attention should be handled in the future. But of course they are public property.
The Princess, a keen amateur photographer, has been out of the public eye since abdominal surgery in January. But the lack of information about her health has fueled wild speculation and theories on social media. British tabloid The Sun has now published a grainy video and screen grab images said to be of the princess with Prince William at a farm shop in Windsor this weekend, looking relaxed and smiling. Kensington Palace has made no comment on the video. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
And that is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having an awesome Tuesday morning. Well, there it goes. The temperature sliding down. Abby's in a moment to tell us why we don't have a daytime high in Winnipeg today. Also, this hour on the show, what will be happening today is spring. It will come officially at 10:06 tonight. We asked some Winnipeggers how they felt about that. Also, we're going to talk about the idea of spring cleaning your work life. It's more than just deleting a few emails if you want to find real balance in 2024, so stay tuned for that conversation. And then at 10 to 8 this morning, the NDP's proposed name change bill is supposed to help sexual assault victims, but someone who works in a crisis center says it won't be helpful. We'll find out why. That's coming up at 10 to 8. So we're going to get her perspective on that bill. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, who's in our news center with other stories that are developing in our province. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Premier Wab Kinew hopes backup plans to bring fuel into Winnipeg are in place before the city runs out. The problem, of course, is that Imperial Oil is shutting down a pipeline to Winnipeg for about 3 months. We'll hear what the Kinew government has in store. As well, we're going to take you to a scene on Selkirk near McPhillips, where police have been since yesterday afternoon. Police are telling us this morning it is a very serious incident. We have a reporter on the scene. We're going to hear from Megan Ketchison in our next local news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather. We'll
You're
wait
welcome.
the details that we can find out today. Let's get into what's going on in the details in our forecast. As I mentioned, Abby, we have no daytime high in Winnipeg.
No daytime high, I guess. Just blame it on the winds because it starts from 20, then it gusts up to 40, and then it's going to be gusting up to 60. And you know, when it's northwest, that's what it feels like. And I think this is just a way of, the system trying to say, I still want to hold on to winter for a bit.
Yeah.
Your Winnipeg.
Our actual temperature is going to fall.
Yeah, it's just going to keep dropping all the way down to a -10. But currently, we are at -3 under cloudy skies. Today's forecast brings a mix of sun and clouds with a chance of flurries this morning. And you need to watch out for that wind I talked about coming from the northwest, making it feel even colder because temperatures will be dropping to a low of -10 during your lunch break. But this morning, as you prepare, it's feeling like a bone chilling -20 with the wind chill. Brandon is currently at -2, mostly cloudy. Thompson is at -20 with drifting snow. Churchill is at -25 with light snow and blowing winds. And also don't forget that blizzard warning is in effect with heavy snow and blowing winds, reducing visibility to near 0 times. Duffin at -4, Gimlet at -5, Steinbach at -2, and Morris at -1.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
And the commute. Corey, any issues there?
It's a good day to be out on your bike, says Dan on a bike. He's the rapid transit is looking good, he says, the odd icy patch. And on my way in, the sidewalk, I was running in today, and I couldn't really take the sidewalks too icy, but the bike lanes is how I got in this morning as well. So maybe that's the place to be. Roads, look out for potholes. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. I'll let folks know what you're seeing. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, what does it mean to spring clean your work life? If just thinking about the state of your inbox and all the unread email makes you anxious, or other things in the workplace are making you struggle to find balance, our next guest is here to help us on this, about to be first day of spring. Jennifer Moss is a speaker and workplace strategist, and I spoke with her earlier this morning.
Good morning.
So why is it important to spring clean, so to speak, your work life?
Just like spring cleaning our home feels good. Well, I mean, when it's done, tackling those projects that we've put off at work also feels very satisfying. And I make a point to say that it's not procrastination entirely, because that suggests we've just had all this extra time on hand and we're just avoiding the work. It's more like we are time starved. There's just so much more to do. There's higher priorities. And so what we need to do is take a seasonal approach and look at it like, okay, I'm going to just push this up to the priority threshold, take that mental clutter that makes us feel kind of bogged down and stressed out, and then put it into action, and we'll feel more productive and healthier once we finish it up.
We mentioned email off the top. I think that's a really common one, but it also can be a big problem. What are your suggestions for tackling an unruly inbox? And do you have to accept that you're going to end up having to let go of something that you probably should have responded to?
Yes, I mean, all the above. I mean, we are just in digital overwhelm, and it's written communication. It isn't just email, but we send 347 billion emails every single day globally, so that's a lot. And then we add in Slack, Teams, Google Docs, all of the other, sharing environments. We are causing this amount of digital overwhelm that's making us have to work into the evenings and weekends. And so we do need to set aside that we might not have been able to answer all of that and let ourselves off the hook. But starting now, just unsubscribe to some of those emails that have landed in your inbox that are causing clutter. I mean, even just start with 50 emails that you unsubscribe to, because for people who receive more than 100 messages every day, that takes them 80 hours every year to clean up their inboxes, which is just a huge time waste. We also have to get out of those Slack channels or whatever social collaboration channels or emails that we've somehow been brought into that we don't need to be on. And then try to go at least once a year to zero unread if you're that person that doesn't get there very often. It does feel very good to do it.
Let's go to another task that happens in the day. Meetings can suck time away. Not if they're, relevant and necessary meetings, but how do we tidy our schedules to decide? Make sure we're attending meetings that are useful and necessary, as I said, but cutting the clutter on the other ones. And is that something that has to be agreed upon by the group? Because if you're the one that decides that, everyone else says you can't miss a meeting, there's a sort of culture that you have to be there.
You really nailed it, because it is a cultural thing. And yet we've developed really bad habits that exploded over the pandemic that we've continued to hold on to. Teams meetings alone has increased by 252%. So you can imagine extrapolated that across all other video conferencing tools, and just meetings in general have gone up. And we had meeting fatigue before. So we need to have a reset and realize this is a bad habit. Our team, even if we can't talk to our boss necessarily, our team can have more etiquette. We've really gone to a point where we have lost that respect for people's time. So let's talk as a team. Are there meetings we can cut? Are there meetings we can shorten? Can we make sure that if we finish early, we're really good with each other about jumping off and not extending to the hour? Are there times where we can ask people to jump on and off? Can we, at least amongst ourselves, say, hey, I am okay if you don't invite me to a meeting. I will not be, upset. I will not feel hurt or slighted if you don't invite me, because we are overlooping. And creating that culture, at least in a small group as best as we can, gives us back minutes, and then those minutes add up to hours.
What about spring cleaning when it comes to our workload? And that's an interesting one, because we're not always in control of our own workloads.
It's hard. It's a privilege to say no to our boss. Most people don't feel like they can do it, which is totally fair. But there are ways that we can control the controllables. Sometimes these expectations on workload are imposed, but we have created this toxic productivity habit. I mean, that started in the pandemic again, where we woke up, checked our phone, where we feel like we need to always be on until late into the night. We can't turn ourselves off. We can't seem to take a vacation without actually getting rest. These are the extras that that we are putting on ourselves. So we have to start setting boundaries and get better about turning off. And also, those things that maybe we put our hand up to, those extras that were giving us joy and now they're causing stress, remove ourselves from those. There's just ways that we can, try to streamline our workload, and then the rest isn't in our control, unfortunately.
It's interesting because you've raised the pandemic a couple of times, but during the pandemic, we all also said, oh, we won't go back to this rat race. We'll value our mental health. We'll, you know what I mean? We'll slow down, but still be productive. But then we went right back at it with, in many industries, fewer staff, more deadlines, more goals, almost a catch-up mentality. There's training gaps. Like we're in a different environment, yet we really have gone back to some habits that we've come out almost more stressed.
It's true, and we're seeing that, burnout rates. I hear people say, oh, burnout is so 2020. That's actually not true. In Canada, we're seeing workers at some of the peak pandemic rates of burnout because we aren't taking time for recovery. We're just sort of business as usual, and now people are extremely exhausted, and so you're seeing people opt out. We're seeing people find other places where they can go where they have more work-life balance or flexibility, and that's where employers need to get really more aware of the fact that there is this level of exhaustion, and people are making choices with their feet by walking out because it's too taxing. And so, I always look at it as institutional stress left unmanaged. It's workplace stress left unmanaged that causes burnout, and workload is a big part of it. We can only do so much to control that workload.
Just last, setting boundaries, you've alluded to this, obviously can be difficult for a lot of people, but particularly if you do have a direct boss to report to, as most of us do, or many of us do, I should say. What's your advice for that conversation without hurting your career?
This is a skill set that I'm an Xer, and we were really taught this sort of managing up relationship and understanding that there is this person that is, in control of your career, in control of your job. And there's ways for us to pull people into those conversations where it becomes a joint decision. But for people that, our bosses in particular that are always asking things kind of right at deadline or at last minute, one of the things we want to do is just say, proactively, I have some projects coming due, I have a deadline, I have some things coming up, I want to make sure I give myself enough time to give whatever you need. Do you have any purview of what's coming down the line? Can I help you before this X date so that I can make sure I juggle? Or I have these priorities, 1, 2, 3, and I know you care about all 3 of them. Which one would you say needs to be number 1, 2, and 3? So have those conversations where you're both enrolled in the conversation, and that makes it so that your boss inevitably gets the final word.
I'm an Xer too, and I think you're right that it's almost a skill that's been lost, or else that we need to do better at passing down to other generations so those conversations happen and we can all not burn out and do good work together. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. This is a great conversation. Thanks.
Jennifer Moss is a speaker and workplace strategist. It is right now 7:22 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. or on the app. And we've got a tune next from a Manitoba artist, Fuller Hall. And see if, Fuller Hull rather, see if this resonates with you, because it's called Bus 44. And in Winnipeg Transit, the 44 bus is Gray Street out in East Elmwood. It actually stops at 95 stops in the area. It starts at Kildonan Place Terminal, so right by the mall there, and then it goes all the way to Stadacona and Talbot. So here it is in song, Bus 44.
Bus 44 is late again. I won't get to work on time. It takes so long just to start my page, and this ride ain't worth a dime. Boss is barking about my attitude. Says I got to try to care, but I'm still thinking about what I'm gonna do when I can get out of there. But I ain't got no plans, ain't sure just where I stand. All I've got are my I should start a band. I saw you staring from across the room. Wasn't sure if I should run or fall. Before I knew it, we were in full bloom, and I lost sight of it all. Days to weeks and months to years. Well, time just kind of flew by. Too many smokes and maybe one too many beers. I didn't even have to try. And I ain't got no plans. Ain't sure just where I stand. All I've got are my hands. Maybe I'll go start that band.
Fuller Hall from Beausejour, Manitoba. He released his first album in the spring of 2021. This tune's Bus 44, aka the Gray Street Bus. Maybe you're on it listening today in East Elmwood. 7:26 right now. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC 89.3 on the app or on YouTube. Morning, everyone. Let's get to morning sports. Paul McGowan is in. Hello.
Good morning, Marcy.
So the media had a chance to meet Canada's new soccer CEO yesterday. What did we learn?
The short answer is not much. And so, Kevin Blue knows his way around a podium. And so while there are plenty of questions facing the organization, like whether playing well and winning games could bankrupt Soccer Canada, which is a legitimate concern right now, yesterday we got answers like this.
We all are aspiring for, obviously, the team to win on Saturday and to win going forward. That's what we're here to do, is to help the players and help the teams win. There are several financial misalignments that need to be addressed. As part of my overall review of the finances, certainly there will be a number of things that we'll have to look at.
There are financial misalignments that need to be addressed, should go in the Sports Executive Hall of Fame. Especially true given TSN's reporting yesterday. Rick Westhead writing that the organization is on pace to record a third straight deficit and is in a financial crisis. And granted, none of this is Kevin Blue's doing, not the $40 million lawsuit from players, not the men's team having to fundraise to cover the cost of flights and games. But Blue certainly has his work cut out for him as he starts this job with Soccer Canada.
Let's talk curling now. Canada with a big day ahead of the World Women's Curling Championship today.
A big day ahead after a fourth straight victory yesterday to open the tournament. It leaves them, Italy, and Switzerland as the only three rinks that are still undefeated. Canada is curling better than any rink at the Worlds right now. That's what the percentages say. But let's hear from Team Canada, starting with Emma Miskew talking about skip Rachel Homan.
She's been playing so well all year. She's working really hard and it's showing. To me, she's always just super talented and makes a ton of shots. But I think the difference this year is we're all throwing the rock very similar. And so she knows exactly how she has to throw it and trusts us in what we tell her to know how to make every shot. She'll make anything out there right now.
A glowing review there from Emma Miskew. Surely Rachel Homan feels the same way.
We definitely have some room for improvement.
Homan, a little bit more critical of herself. She did say that the team is making a ton of big shots and enjoying playing in front of the home crowd, but then also reiterated that there is work to do. So she is dialed in right now. Canada, by the way, facing Italy as we speak. It is 2-0 Italy in the second end.
Whenever athletes aren't verbose, they're just focused. We can hear it. Right?
Which is a great thing for Canada that Rachel Homan is dialed in right now.
It is. Let's end on hockey. We saw a milestone last night that's only been achieved twice in the sport's history.
Yeah, and that is the milestone of 19 consecutive 20-goal seasons. It's been done by Gordie Howe, by Brendan Shanahan, and now by Alex Ovechkin. He had 2 goals last night against Calgary. Teammate Dylan Strome talked about watching some of those goals from up close.
It's impressive. I mean, he's a world-class player. He's a Hall of Famer. There's not many things that hasn't been said about him, but he keeps doing it even at age 38, I think he is at now. It's fun to be a part of, fun to watch. When you're in front of the net sometimes, it's not the most fun, but usually I'm kind of off to the side. I don't think he needs a screen to beat a goalie with that shot, so I never get tired of seeing that. Love when it gets through. He's been doing it for a long time, and nice to be out there with him.
Also tonight, the Jets in New York to take on the Rangers. New York, not just second in the East, second in the entire NHL. And Coach Rick Bowness made that point on Sunday about the Jets not playing well against top teams. He's not wrong. Since the beginning of the new year, Winnipeg has just 2 wins in 9 tries against teams in playoff positions. So we'll see if they can make it 3 tonight. A puck drop at 6.
All right, Paul McGowan, thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
That is Morning Sports on CBC. Every morning here, heard at 7:25 a.m. If you have an issue on the commute, 788-3093. We haven't heard of anything major developing, but please use the line if you need. Coming up after the news, we'll talk about the first day of spring and how you're spending it. But right now, it is time for your newscast.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, spring does officially arrive later tonight, but winter has got a grip on that temperature. Our temperature is only going to fall through the day to -10 this afternoon, windy as well. Winnipeg police continue holding a scene on Selkirk Avenue where they've been since yesterday afternoon. We are just starting now to learn some details. CBC reporter Megan Ketchison is there right now. Megan?
Well, Winnipeg police are here on the scene again. They are in front of and behind a house on Selkirk Avenue near McNichol. Now, what I can tell you is that the police tape is up in front of the house. In behind the house, you can see there is a lot of light in the backyard. There's high fencing that's been put up and a beware of dogs sign. Winnipeg police tell us they are investigating a serious incident. They'll have more details for us later. They were called here around 4:30 in the afternoon. Neighbors tell me that yesterday afternoon and into the evening, there was a heavy police presence again. Now there are police that are holding the scene for investigators. There is no threat to the public from what I've been told, but we have no word so far on arrests. Last night, our people were here in the area and they saw an animal services vehicle that was here in front of the home as well. We are hoping for more details, but right now, Selkirk Avenue is open, but we do have a police presence in front of and behind this house on Selkirk near McNichol. Reporting live, Megan Ketchison, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Megan. Well, Premier Rob Canoe hopes backup plans to bring fuel into Winnipeg are in place before the city runs out. Canoe's government is pressuring the oil companies to fill the void resulting from that unplanned pipeline shutdown. He says Winnipeg uses about 12,000 barrels of gasoline a day. Almost all comes through the pipeline. Canoe says there is a 2-week supply in the city right now, and he hopes the oil companies can set up alternative plans to bring the fuel in by truck and train.
Quebec has a strategic reserve of maple syrup, but our country does not have a strategic reserve of gasoline. So somebody might want to do something about that. That's the sort of thing that we're looking at right now.
And Canoe says he's also talked with North Dakota's governor about potentially borrowing equipment or even providing a backup fuel supply. A mother is begging the province for help so she and her family can stay here. Kin Gua has lived in Winnipeg with her husband and 10-year-old son for the past 3 years. She worries they'll have to return to China when her federal work permit expires in June. Now, Gua and her family are trying to stay through the Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program, but it is getting more applications than it can accept in a year. As well, the program is prioritizing newcomers who have family connections in Manitoba. Gua feels that puts her at a disadvantage.
We have no relative here, but we have friends here. We love here, we study here, we working here. We made a strong connection with Manitoba.
And she says her son has been crying because he doesn't want to leave. Manitoba's immigration minister says she is working with the federal government to find a solution. 18 balloons were released into the air at Assiniboine Park last night. Maya Grattan would have celebrated her 18th birthday yesterday. The teen was one of 5 people killed in Carmen on February 11th. Juliet Hastings says she wanted to wish her daughter a happy birthday. All of Grattan's contact with CFS leading up to her killing is now under review by the province. Grattan was living with the man now charged with her death. 29-year-old Ryan Manikiewicz is also charged in the deaths of his partner and their 3 children. He faces 5 counts of first-degree murder. New legislation on workers' rights in the province is stalled at the Manitoba legislature. The government tried to introduce 2 bills yesterday, but the opposition Conservatives used procedural tactics to delay them. One bill would forbid employers from bringing in replacement workers during strikes and lockouts. Bea Brusk is president of the Canadian Labour Congress.
Replacement workers means there's violence potentially on a picket line, means divided communities and divided families. We know that passing this kind of legislation is going to be critical for labour peace and to make sure that workers get a fair deal when they go to that bargaining table.
Another NDP bill would end a requirement for secret ballot voting for workers to unionize if the majority sign a union card. The latest global report on air quality is out today.
Previous years, Canada has the cleanest air quality in all of North America. This year, we saw just the exact opposite.
Gloria Dolphin-Hammes with IQ Air, the organization behind today's report. Hammes says Canada's levels are double what is considered safe by the World Health Organization. The study says the cause of Canada's worsening air quality is the recent rise in wildfires. And it is winter's last gasp. Spring officially begins later tonight at 10:06 p.m. Winter was milder than usual across much of the province. Last month, Winnipeg recorded its 3rd warmest February in 150 years. Dave Phillips at Environment Canada says those mild days could impact our warm season.
Are there going to be more bugs and diseases and pests and these creatures that winter kills? What will the water levels? They're lower. We didn't have very much snow. And that is good for power production and irrigation water and of course the forest fires.
And Phillips is predicting another year of drought in Western Canada. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather, thank you.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells in our news center this morning. It is right now 7:36 a.m. Hopefully your Tuesday's going well. I cannot believe that we're already at this point of the month. I mean, we've turned the halfway corner in March. Let's find out what this last partial, I guess, official day of winter is going to be like. Abby?
Yes, it's just going to be dropping all the way to -10 today. Currently, Winnipeg, we are at -3 under cloudy skies. You should expect some sun and clouds later today and a chance of flurries later in the morning. You need to watch out for the wind, which is picking up and it's making it feel a bit even colder. Heading west to Brandon. Brandon is currently at -2 degrees with mostly cloudy skies and a chance of flurries this morning for folks in Brandon. Your temperature is going to be dropping to -8 later after lunch period. Moving up north to Thompson, it's bone chilling at -20. Further north in Churchill, bundle up, it's chilly -25 with light snow and blowing winds. Expect mostly cloudy skies with a mix of sun and clouds later this morning, and a blizzard warning is in effect with heavy snow and blowing winds reducing visibility near zero at times. In Dauphin, it's currently -4 under cloudy skies. Expect some cloudy cover with a chance of flurries later this morning, followed by a mix of sun and clouds later, and the temperature is going to remain steady near -8 degrees throughout the day. In Gimli, it is chilly at -5 with cloudy skies. Also, today will bring you a mix of sun and clouds with a possibility of flurries later this morning also, and then you'll be seeing your temperature drop to -12 after lunch hour. In Steinbach, it's currently -2 and cloudy. Also, we'll see a mix of sun and clouds and a chance of flurries this morning, and temperatures will be deep into -10 in the afternoon. And finally, Maurice is chilly at -1 with cloudy skies. You need to brace yourselves because it's going to be a kind of changing conditions for that part of the province. It's going to have a mix of sun and cloud, a slight chance of flurries this morning, and then windy from the northwest with temperatures dropping significantly throughout the day, reaching a low of -10. But right now we are at -3 and dropping to -10.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Corey,
Pretty quiet commute overall this morning. But if you do see something going on, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
You think we look lazy after Abby? Abby's always got all this information.
Yeah, all this stuff.
Temperature's dropping. There's a blizzard warning, and you and I are like,
don't slip on the sidewalks.
Nothing going on. Nothing going on.
I'll take it, though, because when it's busy, it's busy.
Agreed. Yeah, no news is good news. Thanks, Corey.
Yeah.
788-3093. As mentioned, if it is busy in your world, let us know. Well, let's talk spring. As you heard Heather say, it officially arrives at 10:06 tonight. Are you excited for the change of season? We sent CBC's Jim Agapito out to the Forks last night to ask that question.
Emerald Ellison.
Robert LaPalme. First day of spring. How do you feel about that? Well, it's pretty icy out still, and I'm kind of disappointed that the weather's going to drop in the next couple days. I was hoping I could ride the bike soon enough.
I'm excited to get outside again.
She's more excited than I am.
Tora Benera. Very excited.
My name is Nella Vashtuk.
I'm Ryan Burham.
I'm very excited. I'm sick of the winter, and I can't wait for spring, so I'm very excited.
Same answer for me. I'm definitely very excited for spring and start seeing the green.
It hasn't really felt like winter. Temperatures have been warmer, but now it feels like it's dragging on. I'm wondering, how do you feel about that?
Well, it's just been icy, so I'm excited to get outside again when it's like nice and melted.
We've been taking it a little easy right now because she's pregnant, so we haven't been going outside as much as we should be, but I've tried to not pay attention too much to what the news is telling me and what the weather's saying, just because I'm trying to keep my spirits up.
The last snowstorm, that kind of sucked, but other than that, it was a pretty good winter. I did lots this winter. It was beautiful outside.
What did you do?
Lots of skating, lots of hiking, lots of all that other. I took advantage of it. I grew up here, so when it's nice like that, you take advantage of it.
You know, it kind of sucks because, global warming and things like that. I just hope that soon it kind of goes back to normal and we can just enjoy the spring and, forget about the winter.
Yeah, definitely been a bit of a crazy winter, but I'd rather this more mild winter and a little bit longer than a very cold winter and being shorter, so it's not bad.
How are you personally both getting ready then for, the season change?
Switching out the wardrobe, getting the warmer clothes out.
What do you have?
A lot of dresses because I'm currently pregnant.
I'm just taking it one step at a time, putting one shoe on before the other, I guess.
I am a avid lover of rubber boots, so I have been playing in the water quite a bit, and that's what I'm planning on doing. Let's get rid of the snow and let's bring on the spring.
I'm excited to get back on my bike. I got a bike last summer, so I definitely want to, be able to bike around. Just spend more time outside, because I didn't spend too much time outside during the winter, so definitely get outside more and just have more fun.
Exactly my answer, just spending time outside and enjoying the weather and the sun shining on my back. Yeah.
I'm curious, what are some of the first signs of spring to you?
I would say once the ice goes away.
The flowers. I love the flowers. I love the colors of the trees. I love to see the animals, the rabbits and everything like that. That's my favorite part.
Definitely seeing the little sprouts of flowers and things like that. I definitely noticed that a lot. So, just seeing little bits of green and things like that, I think that's the signs of spring for me. At least that's what I look for.
Yeah, definitely like the buds on the trees and the flowers and plants sprouting out of the ground.
Snow melting, slippering in the morning and being super hot in the afternoon. Other signs of spring are potholes. That's a sign of spring is the potholes.
Now, spring cleaning is a big thing associated with spring. Will you guys be doing that, and what will you be doing?
I won't be doing it.
I'll be doing all the spring cleaning, yeah. I have a lot of stuff on my property I got to take care of still, which I've been procrastinating about. So the cold weather is kind of a blessing right now.
I sure will. My room could definitely use a bit of cleaning and, getting rid of some old clothes or things like that. So looking forward to my spring cleaning time, yeah.
Definitely me too. It's great to have a fresh space when the sun starts shining and stuff, so yeah.
Future plans for spring, what are you most excited about? Oh, getting back to work, yeah. I've been on layoff for a couple months now, so I'm excited to get back. What do you do? I build fences.
Getting together with friends. I'm excited for that.
Getting my bike ready, planning for camping, vacations.
So what are you doing to get ready for spring? It arrives officially tonight at 10:06 p.m. That is local time here in Manitoba. And wondering what's on your mind. That was Jim Agapito out talking to people yesterday about what's on their minds. You can call us this morning. Love to get some calls on tonight, the show later this morning, or else on tomorrow's show. So give us a call, 788-3205.
There are stories you just can't stop thinking about. They take you somewhere, they introduce you to someone, they share something new with you. Liftoff. Those are the stories you want to share with your friends, and CBC's award-winning documentary team is bringing them to you every week on Storylines. Storylines, new this season on CBC Radio 1, and always on demand on the CBC Listen app.
7:44 a.m. and we've got music from Winnipeg singer-songwriter Field Guide, who's back with a brand new single as a solo artist on CBC. This one's called Style. Style from Field Guide on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. On your Tuesday morning, it's cloudy out there, and we are expecting a high today that is, not a high at all. Temperature's just going to drop. It's -3 right now. Our temperature will fall to -10 this afternoon in the city. It's going to be very windy in Winnipeg as well. If you need us on the drive this morning, your morning commute has been pretty good. We've heard actually from cyclists that say things are moving well out there. If you are walking, you might be skipping sidewalks. I guess not skipping on the sidewalk, skipping using the sidewalk because you do have those ruddy, icy conditions. But other than that, things have been moving well. 788-3093 if you have an update. Now, still ahead of the program today, since Winnipeg Police Chief Danny Smythe called out the CFS system after a string of violent crimes linked to teens living in care, we've been hearing reaction from a number of perspectives. After 8 today, a Winnipegger who has now aged out of care talks about what her life was like in a foster home and also in a group home and the pros and cons of living in a group home. So that insight is coming up on the program after 8 o'clock. By the way, we did request a full interview with Police Chief Danny Smythe here on Information Radio with me, but they declined. They did, of course, the police chief speak at a press conference last week. You can find that on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Well, next on the program, a warning that our next conversation covers the topic of sexual assault. And as you heard in the news yesterday, Manitoba's NDP government introduced new legislation that would ban convicted sex offenders from legally changing their names. Actually, that news coming out last week. The purpose would be to prevent offenders from taking on a new identity. Now, yesterday, we did talk to a criminal defense lawyer, Crystal Antilla, about what she thinks of this bill.
I don't know that it's entirely necessary. I think that, there are already protections in place in order to provide some level of monitoring of individuals who have sexual offenses on their record. And I certainly see it as a potential problem for individuals who are simply trying to rehabilitate after they've served their sentence, for example, and are trying to move forward and just reintegrate into society.
That is criminal defense lawyer Crystal Antilla from Winnipeg sharing her perspective on the show yesterday with us. Now, next on the program, someone who works closely with survivors of sexual assault shares a similar perspective to Antilla. Coral Kendall is with us, Executive Director of Survivors Hope Crisis Center. Good morning.
Hello.
So what was your initial reaction then to the proposed bill?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear from others working more closely with offenders that our opinions align quite closely. My real initial reactions to Bill 23 was it really doesn't hold any significant benefit to survivors of sexualized violence. And because it really has a high risk of further isolating and under-resourcing those who offend, that can only lead to poorer outcomes and actually an increased risk of future harm for survivors or those who can be future victims.
I think that your point of view and perspective is interesting because people may not expect that. So can you tell us a little bit about what you hear from the victims that you work with and to elaborate on why this bill would not further protect them?
Yeah, so really there's two key pieces that I think shape our perspectives on this when working with survivors and hearing close perspectives from them. One piece is that we know most sexualized violence happens in interpersonal relationships. It's happening with acquaintances, friends, and family members. Those are the highest rates of sexualized violence that is experienced. It's not the stranger danger you think of in a dark alleyway or, that sort of thing. So name change or not, offenders are existing in social spaces and online under any pseudonym that they please. And in those spaces, they can still continue to perpetuate harm regardless of a legal name change. So that's not creating any additional means of safety for future victims. And especially if the offender is someone already known to the survivor, obviously they'll continue to recognize that individual, no matter what their alias is or regardless of any legal changes. The other piece is that it really seems to rely significantly on the assumption that survivors are accessing legal means of protection and legal means of reparation to heal from their experiences, and that they need something like this bill to create safety for them. But what we know is that survivors are incredibly capable and powerful to move forward and heal without relying on keeping tabs on the movements of their offender, and most would probably wish to never think about that person again, because as it stands, incidences of sexual violence are so underreported for a variety of reasons, including the risk of re-traumatization when going through court proceedings, historical harm that's already been existing in legal systems, and then just the fact that there is an extremely low conviction rate for sexual offenders. So for survivors to see any sort of benefit from this, there's so many different factors at play that have to align perfectly with the stars. And instead, what is at higher risk is that offenders are more isolated, more under-resourced, and then creating further risk of harm.
What's your sense of you mentioned rates of reoffense being low, I believe is what you said. What's your sense of rehabilitation of a sex offender? And if you look around, what countries maybe are doing well from your point of view and perspective?
Yeah. I'm not sure that I said rates of reoffending are low because as our systems exist, we're not creating as many opportunities as possible to rehabilitate those who offend. We know that there's a significant intersection between those who perpetuate harm through sexual violence and who have experienced this same harm themselves. And so those healing opportunities and therapeutic and restorative justice opportunities for offenders, specifically sexual violence offenders, are paramount to being able to reduce the rate of reoffending.
Got it. I misheard you, and that's actually why I said that, for clarification there.
Okay.
What's your sense overall of if a sex offender can be rehabilitated?
Yeah. What we see is that in the models where rehabilitation is the forefront of the means of not just punitive measures like this bill would take, but really rehabilitative and restorative justice models like what COSA is doing all over the world, that those are where we're seeing the significance of the decrease of reoffending rates when offenders are more supported and given those opportunities to repair themselves and their wrongdoings, and to just have empathy to believe that people are capable of change and for moving forward and doing better.
Did you say COSA?
Yeah, the Circles of Support and Accountability.
And do you also point to other countries, like Nordic countries, for example, that are ahead of us in your view in terms of understanding this and doing better?
Yeah, absolutely. When we're looking at other countries that are more progressive with their restorative justice systems, we see those decreased rates. And so, I don't really understand why the NDP government would be following the lead of the more conservative provinces in our country that have pushed forward this bill, rather than looking to the more progressive governments that exist.
So before you go this morning, Coral, what might be a better way to support victims of sexual assault politically? Just to speak to the leaders who, as you said, you don't quite understand why they went this direction. What would you say to them?
Yeah. I think to better support survivors and survivors who, or those who are at risk of future harm, which is really everybody, it's looking at how we can better resource our communities. So through prevention measures, through funding for nonprofit organizations like ours that does work for sexual violence and the prevention pieces as well, not just reparation from the harm, but prevention to create healthier societies that believe and stand behind survivors and can create healthier individuals and youth who then know how to exist better in healthier relationships, so we can all work at keeping each other safe.
Thank you very much for your time on CBC. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
That's Coral Kendall, Executive Director of the Survivors Hope Crisis Center. So since this bill was announced by the Premier live on our show last week, we've been digging into a number of different perspectives. If you have one to share, you can always reach out to us here as well. And if you would rather write to us, radio 893@cbc.ca is the address to reach us here at the show. Traffic is pretty good. No big issues on the commute. 788-3093 if you do need to report anything. And we'll dip into your forecast after your CBC Winnipeg News headlines.
Good morning. Well, Winnipeg police are still holding a scene on Selkirk Avenue near McNichol. They have been at a house there since about 4:30 yesterday afternoon. Neighbors say there was a heavy police presence. At this point, police are only saying it is a serious incident. So we'll take you to that scene coming up. As well, Premier Wab Kinew hopes backup plans to bring fuel into Winnipeg are in place before the city runs out. Kinew's government's pressuring oil companies to fill the void resulting from that unplanned pipeline shutdown. He says now there's a 2-week supply in the city. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, in the forecast, let's start with a blizzard warning that's for Churchill, York today. 10 to 15 centimeters of snow, wind gusts up to 80. So obviously, if you're up there, you know, because you're looking out the window and probably just seeing the whiteout off the bay. But that's in that area. It should, really be active today into tonight and then hopefully dissipate, and we'll see what happens next. Down south here, very different. We have a day that's going to be cold and getting chillier. Our temperature will drop to -10. Our winds are going to pick up, and it's -3 right now in Winnipeg. Stay with us here on Information Radio after 8. After Winnipeg Police Chief last week, Danny Smythe, called out the CFS system after a string of violent crimes linked to teens living in care, we have been also gathering different points of view on this story. We're going to hear today from a Winnipegger who's now aged out of care about what life was like for her in a foster home, but also in a group home, and the pros and cons of that. So we'll get her reaction to the ongoing story and discussion in our community. That's after 8. I'm Marcy Marcuso. World Report is next.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Anatomy of a Fall is the kind of movie where it's okay to watch it with someone and then spend an hour afterwards arguing over exactly what happened. Justine Triet won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay for it. She'll be here to tell you why she's interested in stories that aren't easy.
You complain about the life that you chose. You're not a victim.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Learning how to trust and why not to lie are important childhood lessons. A new study found that kids were more honest when an adult showed them that they trusted them. How kids learn the social cues around truth and lies, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. For the second time this year, Canada's inflation rate has eased back. Statistics Canada has just released its February Consumer Price Index report. It pegs inflation at 2.8% on a year-over-year basis. This comes as a bit of a surprise to economists. They had forecast a bigger jump in price growth. CBC senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong has more.
This will land on the desk of the Bank of Canada as a pleasant surprise. Most believed Canada saw a slight uptick in price growth in February, and instead here we have CPI coming in easing even further. Remember, the central bank wants to see inflation in that 1% to 3% range, but it specifically targets the midpoint of that range at 2%. And this is one clear step closer to that midpoint. The big driver of the deceleration was food prices, which had been so stubbornly high for so long. Last month, food purchased from stores, groceries, came in at 2.4%, down from 3.4% in January. And it's important to note we're seeing this deceleration in headline inflation in spite of the fact that gasoline prices were up both on a month-to-month basis and compared to last year. Every single core measure that Bank of Canada watches so closely have all shown progress, slowing by 0.2% across the board. So if you hear a heaving sigh of relief out there as you read this, that's both policymakers at the central bank and variable rate mortgage holders hoping that this is enough to nudge the central bank along on its schedule to start cutting rates. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
And in Japan, the central bank has made a historic shift in its monetary policy. It has brought in its first interest rate hike in 17 years. Borrowing costs now sit at 0.1%. The move puts an end to negative interest rates. This comes after a rise in prices and salaries over the last few years. Borrowing-free costs had originally been brought in to stimulate Japan's faltering economy. Former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney is being remembered as a family man, a champion of the environment, and a leader with the courage to get big things done. MPs paid tribute to him yesterday in the House of Commons. Now it is the Canadian public's turn. Starting this morning, he will lie in state in Ottawa. The CBC's Janice McGregor is outside the John A. Macdonald building, where Mulroney's casket will arrive this hour. Janice, walk us through what's going to happen today.
Anyone heading downtown to pay their respects to Brian Mulroney today is going to need to bundle up, Marcia. There's a chilly wind fluttering the flags that will remain half-masted here in the parliamentary precinct until after his state funeral on Saturday. The pomp and circumstance of laying a former prime minister to rest will begin when his funeral cortege pulls up outside the Sir John A. Macdonald building here, just across from Parliament Hill, just after 9:30 Eastern. Mulroney's family is going to be greeted greeted by the speakers of the House of Commons and the Senate, and then follow an honor guard of RCMP officers carrying his casket into the main ballroom here for his lying in state. Officers from the Armed Forces, the RCMP, the Parliamentary Protection Service will then take up a ceremonial vigil inside. The family's going to have some private time in that space, and then a long list of dignitaries are expected to file through to pay condolences, starting with Governor General Mary Simon and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. We're also expecting a couple former Governors General, former Prime Minister Joe Clark, Indigenous leaders, diplomats, opposition leaders, parliamentarians, past and present. These VIPs are going to be able to sign the books of condolences that are set up for mourners here, in addition to paying their respects personally to the family.
And after the VIPs have gone through, it will be the public's turn.
That's right. And over the last 2 weeks, there's been some nostalgia triggered in this town for a time when politics felt different. But it's also true that Mulroney left office deeply unpopular. So, with the passage of time, how many ordinary people remain inspired by his service as Prime Minister and are going to be moved to file through here, either in Ottawa or in Montreal? Their stories, their reflections on his legacy are often the most interesting part of these big events.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from the Parliamentary Precinct in Ottawa. The Gambia is poised to become the first country to overturn a ban on female genital mutilation. The practice was outlawed back in 2018. Currently, it is punishable by up to 3 years in prison. But now, some lawmakers are arguing that ban violates religious freedom. Fatou Balde is a survivor of FGM. She attended the debate yesterday.
It was sitting in the parliament and hearing men talk about what should happen to little girls' bodies, and also men trivializing the pain of FGM, men who will never understand what it is like to live with the consequences of FGM.
A bill that would overturn the ban will be studied by a parliamentary committee for at least 3 months. Then Parliament will vote. In the Gambia, 3/4 of women aged 15 to 49 have undergone FGM. The U.S. says a senior Hamas leader has been killed in an airstrike. Marwan Issa is the most senior Hamas leader to be killed since the war began. Word of his death comes as American officials suggest the promised Israeli assault on Rafah may be delayed. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the attack must go ahead to root out Hamas, but the timing may change after Netanyahu and U.S. President Joe Biden had their first conversation in over a month. Alex Pineda is in Washington. And Alex, what is Joe Biden asking?
Well, he wants a sit-down, a pivotal meeting. Biden wants Israel to send a high-level delegation to Washington with officials from multiple agencies, military, intelligence, humanitarian officials, to hear U.S. concerns about a possible ground invasion of Rafah. Netanyahu has apparently accepted. This summit will happen as early as this week. Now, here's what the U.S. says it wants. Instead of smashing into Rafah, in the words of a senior White House official, the U.S. wants an alternate plan without a major ground invasion into this area. An area not only filled with displaced Palestinians, but also it's a vital transit point for food and aid to suffering civilians. The alternative being promoted by the U.S. is to slow the fighting, keep aid flowing, and stabilize other areas of Gaza, areas where Hamas has already been cleared out. In the U.S. view, this would demonstrate that there's a plan for Gaza with a better future post-Hamas. In Biden's view, any attack on Rafah should be limited and focused on senior Hamas figures.
Biden is sending his Secretary of State back to the region later this week. What are we expecting to hear from Antony Blinken?
Blinken has a pair of objectives for his visit to Egypt and Saudi Arabia. One is a potential hostage deal that would pause the fighting and allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza. His other goal is to talk to the Saudis about a long-term peace plan to normalize Saudi-Israeli relations and lay the groundwork for a long-term peace.
I can say we've also impressed upon Israel the imperative of having a plan for Gaza for when the conflict ends, consistent with Israel's needs to defend itself and make sure that October 7th can never happen again.
This is Blinken's 6th visit to the region since last fall.
All right. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
The CBC's Alex Pineda in Washington. New DNA tools and relentless research have helped solve a 107-year-old mystery. It involves the identity of a British-Canadian soldier who died in the First World War. As Sam Sampson tells us, It ended with a remarkable transatlantic phone call.
I'll read it to you here if I put my glasses on.
Richard Hemsley takes out a letter of condolences about his grandfather, Lieutenant Frank Hemsley.
And it says, he was in fact one of God's good men.
The British military veteran immigrated to Canada in 1911. After farming near Prince Albert, Saskatchewan for almost 5 years, he joined the Canadian military to fight in World War I. Frank died in 1917, leading his battalion into the Battle of Hill 70, a deadly fight against Germany that killed 10,000 Canadians.
He's a much loved and respected member of the family, and we know his story.
But they didn't know where he was until now. Turns out Frank's remains were found in France back in 2012. At the time, Canada's Department of National Defence's Casualty Identification Program couldn't extract enough of his DNA from his bones to ID him. But they tried again last year with new technology, and Richard Hemsley was a match. It was a phone call forensic anthropologist Sarah Lockyer won't forget.
This was the first time that I was able to speak to a grandchild who was the DNA donor for a First World War casualty.
Lockyer's program has 42 other skeletons and 39 other graves to identify. She hopes as technology advances, so too do her chances at solving these mysteries. Meanwhile, Hemsley will add a few personal touches for his grandfather's military reburial this summer in France.
On his gravestone will say, he was one of God's good men.
Sam Sampson, CBC News, Regina.
And that is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube on this last day of winter. Just after 10 tonight, we can say it's officially spring. But when you hear the forecast, you may not be cheering all that much, so we'll get into that in a moment. Also want to mention there's a blizzard warning today up in Churchill, York. This half hour on the show, we've been doing a string of different interviews to gather different perspectives since Police Chief Danny Smythe last week called up the CFS system. There was a string of violent crimes linked to teens living in care. He elaborated, though, and said that the system needs to do better. So today, we're going to hear from a Winnipegger who has now aged out of care about what life was like for her, both in a foster home and also in group homes. So we'll get that perspective coming up this half hour. Also, we're asking you what you're most looking forward to once spring springs. 788-3205. Heather Wells is in with other developing news today. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Winnipeg police are still holding that scene on Selkirk Avenue near McNichol. They have been at a house there since about 4:30 yesterday afternoon, and neighbors telling CBC of a heavy police presence at the time. Right now, just a couple of police cars. Police are only saying it was a serious incident. So we'll hear the latest live from the scene coming up. And Manitoba continues to boast the lowest inflation in Canada. Last month, inflation grew by 0.9% in Manitoba, slightly higher than January's 0.8%. Nationally, the annual inflation rate was 2.8% last month. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, I have to say, Abby, it's a little, I don't know, it's just, I feel sad watching the temperature fall. We started at -1 and it's like steadily going down.
Yeah, we're going all the way down to -10. That's what the forecast looks like for today as we bid farewell to the last morning of winter. Today's forecast brings a mix of sun and clouds with a chance of flurries in the morning, and you need to put into consideration the wind that is going to be picking up from the northwest later, making it feel even colder. As mentioned, temperatures will be reaching a low of -10 later today for Winnipeg, Brandon, Steinbeck, and Dauphin, currently at -4 degrees with cloudy skies. Thompson is at -20, mainly sunny. Churchill is at -26, and Gimli is at -6.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk.
You know what I'm looking
quiet?
forward to about spring?
Yeah, what?
Not having to put a child into a snowsuit. That's the one thing I just, and yeah, I love getting outside. He loves getting outside, but getting into that snowsuit, man, I'm telling you, it is one of the toughest things about
Okay, let's get into spring-like conversation here. Did you manage to register for swimming?
No, the site for me at 8 o'clock. I was on. I had the site ready to go, just
like
to press
so many
register,
other parents this morning,
and it crashed this morning. My friend, who we were trying to get in with, because we just did it last time.
Yep.
She was able to get on the wait list.
'Kay.
But my parent and taught swim class, it did crash for me.
It's a thing, eh? It's like
It's
you
a
have to make
thing.
backroom
It's
deals with
a
other
thing.
parents or something to like get your kid into swimming.
Yeah, it was a whole weird. My wife and I coordinated this morning, like, hey, who's going to be on at 8 o'clock just to hit the registration button? And I did, and it counted down. I watched the countdown.
Yeah.
And then as soon as it hit, the site was working, and then I had to refresh because it didn't turn to a registration button, and then boom, couldn't get back on the site.
Poor Cal. No swimsuit for you. You're
I guess
staying in the
he's just
snowsuit.
going to be a landlubber for his life, I guess.
On land this morning, you've heard from cyclists out there.
Yeah, cyclists is what I've heard of so far. It's been pretty good actually so far from Dan on a bike who took the rapid transit. Said it's pretty good. Just a couple slippery spots, getting splashed by a few puddles here and there as well, which is sadly the reality for some cyclists this time of year. But other than that, haven't heard anything else from any drivers or anything like that. Sidewalks are slippery, I can tell you from my run into work this morning, so be careful. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned this morning, we are taking a closer look at what life is like for kids in CFS care in this province. Since last week, Police Chief Danny Smythe said 14 suspects in violent robberies lived in foster or group homes. And then he went on to say that overall, kids are not getting the supports that they need. So what is life like if you're living as a ward in CFS? How does someone's life intersect with the Manitoba justice system? And what's it like in a foster home versus a group home, for example? Well, 26-year-old Carly Beaulieu lived in both foster and group homes for 8 years. Now, she's aged out of care and is now 26, as mentioned. But when she was 10 years old, she was moved from Sandy Bay First Nation to a Winnipeg foster home. And as you'll hear, that didn't work out. But Carly joins us with some insight to share her experience and what she thinks needs to change. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. No problem.
So you're 10 years old. I want to just go right to that so we can get a lot of your insight in your life. You get taken from your home community of Sandy Bay First Nation. You're put first in a foster home. I understand there were 2 parents there and 1 other child. Mm-hmm. What was that experience like for you? How long did you live there?
So it was actually like a really wholesome experience. I lived there for about 1.5 years, but I think things broke down because I was already an established child, and I had come with things that I guess an established child comes with, and these parents just weren't ready for that.
We heard from a foster parent, one of the perspectives we looked at this week on the show, and she said that as a foster parent, she felt like she wished she had more understanding, or there would be, of things like neurodiversity or things like what if a child, not every child will come with trauma, some will. She wanted more understanding of that stuff and didn't get it. Mm-hmm. Did you feel misunderstood by the foster parents, or what was that relationship like?
Yeah, so the foster parents were just traditionally white people, and I am someone who's Indigenous, so I value my culture a lot, and that was something that I tried to look into. But there was just a lot of conflict with looking into my culture, more so around the fact of them feeling comfortable with exploring certain things. And then I would say that my gender also played a huge role in like them not understanding. I would say that them not being gender diverse was something that definitely played a role in them not being able to understand.
And that is because you yourself, can you share a little bit about what was going on with you at that time?
Yeah, so I had actually been tampering with my gender identity at that age, and I guess I had brought to their attention that maybe I was looking to explore being transgender. I think that I went at it with the assurance of I'm not doing this for the wrong reasons. I'm doing this because I want to be a girl. And I think that there was a lot of confusion and just mixed feelings around that.
So when you left there, I know that you did go through 2 emergency placements. You went on to be in a group home. Mm-hmm. What prompted the emergency placements for you?
So the emergency placements were definitely at the, I guess, last stage of me being able to try and communicate my gender identity issues to my parents. Just wasn't getting through to them. And at that point, I had said, this isn't a safe space for me to grow. I'm not going to be able to unlock my full potential here, I need to get a hold of my social worker. And it was about 9 p.m. when I got a hold of my social worker, and she had made arrangements for me to be placed in an emergency placement while she worked for a group home or a placement.
What's that like? Because there's just before we talk about what life is like in a group home, one of the other perspectives we had during our series, a previous series, actually talked about the average number of moves is like 7. Like 7 different places. So you're now in one place, and then you will go through 2 emergency homes.
Yeah.
What's that like for you to go through that, like as a human being, to be
So
moving
first,
around?
I would definitely say that number is very valid. 7 is definitely like a good number to toss out there. I feel like I've definitely been through more. But that whole like feeling is kind of just like, well, who do you love, right? At some point you're a child, you don't stop aging, right? So you're gonna get to that point where eventually you can't worry about that anymore, right? You need to worry about putting a roof over your head and keeping that roof over your head. So there's just a lot of things that I think that we miss out on when we're being transitioned from home to home.
And if you're worrying about the roof over your head and a support system that gets you, where's your time for childhood in terms of, not worrying?
There is no time for childhood. Like, I would say that a good portion of my teenage years were devoted to figuring out how to sustain life on my own.
You go to the group home.
Mhm.
What was your life like in the group home? Who did you live with there?
So I lived with 9 other boys, and there were about 3 group staff members on at all times, and they were all nice. I mean, for the most part, there was rules to follow, so there wasn't much bullying. But for my sake, I wasn't really one to absorb bullying, so I didn't really pay attention to it. Nothing really stuck to me. Overall, my experience in a group home, I would say, was pretty privileged.
What were to start with the pros of living in a group home? What did you find there that maybe you couldn't find at your specific foster home, or maybe I shouldn't make that direct of a comparison? What were some of the things that you were positive about living there?
So one of the most positive things I would say is the intersecting experiences that I guess came together to care for my trauma as a child. There were definitely like a lot of people from different backgrounds. There were tons of people. I met someone from, where was it? Ethiopia. And she was like the greatest human being alive. She taught me a lot about just what it's like to be humble and be a person who is like grateful for everything. And then there were Indigenous staff. So those were the staff members that, we confided in. We told everything to because we just felt comfortable with them. They opened up doors for our cultural programming that, other staff just could never, right? Because they don't know that, they don't have that experience or that knowledge.
Did you have a sense of safety there? What was that like?
There was some sort of sense of safety. I think that knowing that these people were paid to be there was a little unsettling.
And how old were you at this time?
I was about 13.
13.
Yeah.
Oh, so young, so young, right?
Yeah.
And you look back, you're 26 now, right? I'm obviously an adult woman as
Yeah.
well. So you look back and think about yourself. People might not realize, and maybe please educate us because I don't know if they all are the same or not, but this was a locked facility?
Yeah, so there was a portion of it that's locked, and it's usually like it's like a status. You start off in a locked facility, but then with good behavior and certain like meeting expectations, you might go to an open facility or even a group home that's facilitated by the agency.
So did you have curfews?
Yep. So there are like curfews that are embedded in policy. There are curfews that are sometimes mandated by Winnipeg Police or RCMP.
Okay. And can you share what led you to be in the locked facility at the time?
Yeah. So I actually brought with me
Okay.
a little report that just talked about some of the things. And my social worker at the time was a relative of mine, and what she had wrote I would say is a bit of a conflict of interest, but she said that I had boundaries and engaging I had problems with touching, sometimes refusing to comply with instructions and rules. I also needed to be assessed for depression and ADHD, and I needed to receive supports in my process of exploring my sexual orientation and to explore my Aboriginal culture. So those were like the reasons for referral that were placed in the very first report that I have.
What's your reaction to that? That would be what led you to, if I'm understanding you correctly, that's what led you to be in a locked facility at 13.
So I would definitely say that this is irrational. This is definitely not something that should put someone in a locked facility. I would definitely say that there were more things that were going on that could have been put in this report.
I want to ask you about Police Chief Danny Smythe. He in his comment, so he obviously said the high number of teens committing violent crimes in the city of late. A lot of the teens were in CFS care, but then he elaborated to look at the systems that are working. Did you have intersections with the justice system as a youth as well?
Yes. So actually, I was blamed for a crime that happened in Langreth, Manitoba. So I was involved with the RCMP and later transferred over to Winnipeg Police Service when I was living or residing in Winnipeg for a certain amount of time. And that, I would say, was like one of the worst experiences of my life because the staff and like not only Winnipeg Police, but they would use the curfew like against me. And like keep in mind, I'm only a 14-year-old like kid, right? And my only intention is to get attention, right? And so I'm like being sent to jail for not coming home by 8:30, and like that's not a reason to go to jail. And all in all, like the charges were dropped. I was found not guilty. Like this was all like for nothing, right? I was criminalized throughout all those years for nothing.
How does that stay with you now when you're 26?
It kind of just makes me laugh. Now that I deal with law enforcement, I think I deal with them in a way that it's like, well, there's a sort of like large gap of, I guess, them just not being educated on what is really going on in the community. I'm also thinking back to this one time, another engagement with Portage La Prairie RCMP. They had pulled me over. I was driving. I was actually trying to get away from this guy that I had been staying with while I was in care, and I thought this guy was a safe space. I learned quickly that it was not that case. Trying to get away, the police pulled me over. I tried to get out of the vehicle and talked with him, but he told me to get back in the vehicle, and he didn't want to hear what I had to say. And like I was only 16, 17 at the time, and I'm like trying to beg him not to send me back with this guy, and that's exactly what he did. He gave me a $600 ticket and sent me back with this guy. So like I just laugh when it comes to police and like the things that they do.
There's so many things that I could ask about in terms of improvements, obviously based on what you've just shared, but also what you were saying earlier about, moving through the system here. But what is the biggest thing in your opinion that is missing as somebody that was in CFS care for 8 years that would help people find their childhood and find a safer, better future, even though you found yours on your own?
Yeah, so I would say that definitely collaborating with organizations that do short programming with youth in and from care. There are plenty of youth organizations out there that do youth programming. BGC, Winnipeg, Voices, Manitoba's Youth and Care Network, The Link, Futures Forward, Yes Manitoba. Like,
you never had any of those coming into your life when you were young?
Oh, for sure. I was involved with all of them.
Got it.
But there were some that I guess I had like a little bit of negative involvement with. But I would say that
getting that regular involvement.
Yeah, if Danny really wanted to improve the lives of youth in care, then I would say invest in like programming, like getting them ASSIST certified or NVCI certified, getting them, just first aid certified even. Something as simple as that would get them to feel like they have some type of identity to work towards success.
I just want to end with so people know where you're at now. I know you ended up going to U of W Collegiate just next door. You're now obviously 26, we mentioned. You're running your own small business. What advice would you have for kids in care if someone's listening and maybe they want to hear from a role model or mentor?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, if any youth in Kara are listening, I just want to remind you that you survived what you thought you wouldn't, and you're here today. And I hope that put a smile on your face, and I hope that you can keep going on with whatever is going on. And just remember that there's more to life than what's happening now. There's definitely more opportunities out there than what's being given now, especially.
Thank you very much, Carly, for being with us this morning. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Carly Bolio in studio with us at CBC, lives here in Winnipeg. She did live both in foster and group homes for 8 years. The first one when she was 10 years old, sharing her insight as an ongoing series. Right now, it is in our ongoing series, rather, and you can read more at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Right now, it is 8:28 a.m. We did, during our interview, have a call to our traffic line. Lori called the commuter line, saying that a collision northbound Lachemaudière just before Fermor is blocking the median. So stay right if you're through that area. It just happened, so it may start getting backed up even more. And thanks for the call, Lori, at 788-3093. You're listening to Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and we've got the news coming up here. I just want to mention briefly here before the news that we are going to be in Ashern this week. Tomorrow I'm going to be off the show. We're going to be driving back up for Communities in Focus, looking at Ashern and Ericsdale. We're looking at the Interlake this spring on our series. So if you want to join us, specifically we're broadcasting Thursday morning at the Ashern Chicken Chef. If you want to head down there, we're going to have a bit of a community event following the show. And remember that part of Communities in Focus, the main thing here is listening and hearing the stories. So yeah, we go up and do a show this week. But our reporter Bryce Hoy and our producer Nadia Kidwai, one of our producers, they're up there all week long with office hours in the area. I've posted everything on my Facebook page, so you can check that out if you're up in the area. And if you do have a story to share and you can't make it to visit Nadia in person, or if you don't find Bryce or find us at the Chicken Chef, please write to us at radio893@cbc.ca. So we'll see you on Thursday morning live. Right now, though, it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's mostly cloudy. That wind is starting to pick up. We're at -4 in Winnipeg right now. Temperature is going to continue to slide to about -10 this afternoon. The last official afternoon of winter. Spring arrives tonight. We expect to learn more, and in fact, we have just learned more from Winnipeg Police about that serious incident on Selkirk Avenue. CBC reporter Megan Ketchison is there at Selkirk near McNichol. Megan?
Yes, well, Winnipeg
Squamish
Police
search
tell me
and
that
rescue
this
was
is a
called to the
homicide
Malcolm River
scene
just west of
that they were
Powerhouse
called
Bridge
here
Sunday
last night
afternoon.
or yesterday afternoon
A woman
around
in her
4:30
30s
in the
was with
afternoon.
friends and went in for a swim
An
before
adult
being
male
swept
is
away
the
in an
victim.
area known
There's
for
no
deep
information
ravine
on whether or
canyons.
not there has
They
been
say a
any suspects
multi-agency
or
search
arrests.
continued
Police
into the
are
night and
holding
resumed
the
at first
scene now.
light.
It's a small
Ground crews,
1.5-story
swiftwater
house with
teams,
police
drones
tape
and
around it.
helicopters came
In the
with
back, you
assistance
can
from
see
North
there's
Shore
a high
Rescue
fence.
and
They
Marine
beware
Search
of
and
dog
Rescue.
sign. We were
RCMP say the
colleagues
search
were
was
here last night
suspended
who said they
yesterday
saw an animal
afternoon due to
services
heavy
van.
currents and
Investigators will
difficult
be
terrain.
here for
Anyone who
most of the
sees
morning, I'm
anything
told
along
by
the
police.
Malcolm River
We're
that could
hoping to
relate
have
to the
more
search
information
is
and
asked to
more
call
details
Squamish
later.
RCMP.
But neighbors that I
Renee
spoke to
Lucas,
say last night
CBC News,
they were
Vancouver.
shocked to see the street
There are
blocked
growing
off and
concerns
as many
the
as
lower
20
than average
police
snowpack in
officers
the
on the
province
street,
will have
10
a
police
major
cars
effect
blocking
on
it
the
when
forest
they got
fire
the
season.
call around
One of the main
4:30.
impacts
The
is on
street
how
Selkirk is
early the
not
season
blocked.
may
This is
start.
at Selkirk
There have
near
already been several
McNichol.
fire
The street is
starts
not
this
blocked, but you
year.
do have police
Neil
cars in the
McLaughlin
right-hand lane.
is
Reporting
with the
live,
BC
Megan
Wildfire
Ketchison,
Service.
CBC News.
Thank you so much, Megan. A mother, nervous her family will be forced to leave the country, is begging the province for help. Kin Gua has lived in Winnipeg with her husband and 10-year-old son for the last 3 years. She worries they'll have to return to China when her work permit expires in June. Gua holds a post-graduation work permit, but the federal government no longer is extending those kinds of permits.
We feel very anxious and helpless. When I told my son the serious situation, we may be forced to go home. When he heard this, he cried sadly, and he don't want to live here.
Now, Gua and her family are trying to stay through the Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program, but it is getting far more applications than it can accept in a year. Manitoba's immigration minister says she is working with the federal government to find a solution. Premier Wap Kinew hopes backup plans to bring fuel into Winnipeg are in place before the city runs out. Kinew's government is pressuring the oil companies to fill a void from that unplanned pipeline shutdown. He says Winnipeg uses about 12,000 barrels of gasoline a day. Almost all of it comes through the pipeline. Kinew says there is a 2-week supply in the city right now. He hopes the oil companies can set up alternative plans to bring the fuel in by truck and train.
Quebec has a strategic reserve of maple syrup, but our country does not have a strategic reserve of gasoline. So somebody might want to do something about that. That's the sort of thing that we're looking at right now.
Kinew says he's also talked with North Dakota's governor about potentially borrowing equipment or even providing a backup fuel supply. Manitoba continues to boast the lowest inflation in Canada. Last month, Statistics Canada says inflation in Manitoba grew by 0.9%, slightly higher than January's 0.8%. Nationally, the annual inflation rate was 2.8% in February. The dip nationally comes as a bit of a surprise to economists. They had forecasted a bigger jump in price growth. The province's plan to make it easier for workers to unionize and to ban the use of replacement workers has been stalled. The government tried to introduce the bills in the legislature, but the opposition Conservatives used procedural tactics to delay them. One bill would forbid employers from bringing in replacement workers during strikes and lockouts. B. Brusk at the Canadian Labour Congress says the decision to strike is not made lightly.
Can I afford to go out on strike or can I not? What is the employer trying to take away from me? Workers don't make that decision lightly to walk a picket line. Nobody wants to walk a picket line. People want to get a fair deal. This is about leveling the playing field when you get to the bargaining table.
Another NDP bill would end a requirement for secret ballot voting for workers to unionize if a majority sign a union card. As of this afternoon, members of the public will have the opportunity to pay tribute to Brian Mulroney. The casket containing the body of the former Prime Minister arrives in Ottawa this morning, and Mulroney will lie in state at the Sir John A. Macdonald Building opposite Parliament Hill. Well-wishers can line up for a viewing this afternoon and tomorrow morning before he's taken to Montreal ahead of Saturday's state funeral. It is winter's last gasp. Spring officially begins tonight at 10:06 this evening. Winter was milder than usual across much of Manitoba. Last month, Winnipeg recorded its third warmest February in 150 years. Dave Phillips, senior climatologist at Environment Canada, says those mild days could impact our warm seasons.
Are there going to be more bugs and diseases and pests and these creatures that winter kills? What will the water levels? They're lower. We didn't have very much snow. And that is good for power production and irrigation water and of course, the forest fires.
And Phillips predicts another year of drought in Western Canada. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells, Megan Ketchison, Joni Nicolo, thank you all for your work this morning in our news department. Our live team, Corey Funk, Abby Adiemi, Brad Lillies, thank you guys. And thanks to our APs and our leaders in unit, Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson. Real quick, Corey.
Leisure Guide online was up so I could register my kid for Parent Taught 1 and 2. Very exciting. Yes. Well, we're on the wait list.
We're sharing their parental experience with the listeners.
Yes, very exciting. Also, northbound La Jamodiere, median lane at Fermor. Keep right. There's a collision there that might be causing some backups for folks.
Abby?
It's a cold day. We're going to be just going down to -10.
All right. That'll do it for us. Take care. Be well, Manitoba. As mentioned, I'm off the show tomorrow. We're traveling. Communities in Focus is live in Ashern at the Chicken Chef Thursday morning. And we hope we might see you there. Take care. Be well. You're listening to CBC 89.3 FM on the app or on YouTube.